Hello to all fans of Naruto Lemon. I will post all Naruto Lemon Yaoi, Yuri, or Naruto Lemon stories only on the Boosty channel because Uncle YouTube condemns this. Therefore, I invite everyone who wants Naruto Lemon content to my Boosty channel. Good luck.
お前はどこまで見えている俺の死に様か
A young woman with bright blue eyes and messy pigtails walked toward the Hokage Tower, her steps slow but steady. She had been summoned by Lady Tsunade in the middle of her training session with Kakashi-sensei and Captain Yamato. Kakashi had already left after being called earlier by the Hokage, and now, it was Naruto's turn. It had only been 2 weeks since her return to the village, but it already felt heavy. So much had changed in such a short time. The addition of a new member to Team 7, a so-called replacement for Sasuke, left her uneasy. A new sensei had been assigned to watch over them. And worst of all, their recent encounter with Sasuke had left wounds deeper than any kunai ever could. Naruto bit her lower lip, the memory still sharp. She had made a promise, not just to herself, but to everyone who believed in her, that she would bring Sasuke back no matter what. Her thoughts were interrupted when she looked up and found herself standing before the Hokage's office door. She hadn't even realized she had arrived, her mind so clouded with memories and emotions. From beyond the door, she could hear faint voices and laughter. Naruto took a deep breath, forcing a smile onto her face. She had gotten good at that, hiding the storm inside. With a gentle push, she opened the door. "Yo! Bachan, how are you?" Naruto grinned, her smile radiant, like sunlight cutting through the clouds. "Naruto. Don't call Lady Tsunade that." Sakura scolded, immediately storming toward the blonde. She clenched her fist on instinct but stopped short, reaching instead to pinch Naruto's cheek. As much as Sakura wanted to knock some sense into her sometimes, hurting Naruto just didn't feel right anymore. "Ow wow, Sakura-chan." Naruto whined, rubbing her sore cheek. Then her eyes widened. "Neji? Kakashi-sensei?" "Sigh," she said in surprise. "I didn't even notice you guys were here." Kakashi, ever composed, looked up from his familiar orange book just long enough to offer his usual lazy eye smile. Neji, standing silently with his arms crossed, gave a brief nod, calm, composed, and unreadable as always. "Naruto-chan," Sai greeted with a polite smile, his eyes closed in that signature awkward way that still made Naruto twitch a little. Shizune, standing beside Tsunade, gave an awkward laugh at the chaos that seemed to follow Naruto like a storm cloud. Tsunade, however, looked anything but amused. Her eyebrow twitched, and the vein on her forehead throbbed slightly. She cleared her throat with a sharp cough, instantly commanding the room's attention. "Now that Naruto's finally here, I'll get straight to it," Tsunade said, her voice firm. "I'm assigning her and Neji to a mission, an undercover one." Naruto blinked. "Huh? Just the two of us?" Before Tsunade could respond, Sakura stepped forward, clearly confused. "Excuse me, Lady Tsunade, but, if this is an undercover mission, why did you call all 3 of us here? I thought this was about Team 7? Tsunade turned her golden eyes on Sakura, expression softening just slightly. "You're right to ask. I have a separate mission for you, Sakura, and Sai and Kakashi as well. You'll be leaving shortly on a reconnaissance mission in the Land of Rivers." Sakura's brows furrowed, clearly still puzzled. "But I needed all of you here to hear this at once," Tsunade continued. "These assignments are sensitive, and I don't want any crossed wires. Neji and Naruto's mission is unique and will require absolute discretion." Naruto tilted her head, curious, and a little excited. "What kind of mission, Bachan?" Tsunade gave her a look. "I'll explain in full detail in a moment. But Naruto, this won't be like your usual missions. You'll need to act, adapt, and keep your impulsiveness in check. Lives may depend on it." Naruto blinked and straightened her posture, sensing the weight behind Tsunade's words. Neji's gaze briefly flicked toward her, unreadable as ever, but something about his silence felt heavier than usual. As Sakura, Sai, and Kakashi prepared to leave for their mission, Naruto stood quietly by the door, watching them with a wistful look in her eyes. A small pang tugged at her chest. She didn't want to be separated from her team, not again. She offered a soft smile and a wave as they left, but the moment the door closed behind them, her shoulders slumped slightly. Tsunade's voice cut through the silence. As I said earlier, you and Neji will be going on a mission together. She signaled to Shizune, who let out a quiet, startled gasp before scrambling toward the filing cabinet. After a brief shuffle, she found the folder and handed it over with a sheepish smile. Tsunade took it with a sigh and opened it, then handed it directly to Neji. This is the person you'll be protecting. Neji took the folder without a word and opened it carefully. His pale eyes scanned the photo clipped to the first page. Naruto leaned in to take a peek, her curiosity piqued. She looks a lot like me, Naruto muttered, blinking. Neji raised an eyebrow. You're right. The resemblance is uncanny. The woman in the photo had soft, pale blonde hair, more platinum than gold. Her eyes were a cool, light blue, almost silver in the lighting of the picture. While Naruto's features were more sunlit and vibrant, her hair the bright gold of summer, her eyes the color of a clear sky, this woman had a more refined, delicate look. Still, the similarities were striking enough to confuse someone at first glance. She's the daughter of a noble family from the land of silence, Tsunade explained. There's been an assassination attempt on her life. She's being hunted by a rogue faction that aims to start a civil conflict using her death as a catalyst. Naruto straightened, her expression growing more serious. Because of the strong resemblance, Tsunade continued, we're going to use it to our advantage. Naruto, you'll be disguising yourself as this woman and taking her place in public. Neji will be your escort and bodyguard. Naruto's jaw dropped slightly. Wait, me? Acting all fancy and noble-like? You'll manage, Tsunade said dryly. You have no choice. Neji didn't react outwardly, but his gaze flicked briefly toward Naruto, his mind already beginning to calculate the risks. This mission requires absolute discretion, Tsunade added. No flashy moves. No impulsiveness. You must act as one person, a highborn lady under protection. And Neji, you are to guard her at all costs. But you're also there to make sure she doesn't do anything, well, stupid. Naruto pouted. Hey. Tsunade ignored her. You'll have 3 days to study her habits, speech patterns, and movements. Shizune will help you prepare before you depart. If you fail to convince the enemy, it won't just cost your lives, it could spark a war. The weight of Tsunade's words settled in the room like a heavy fog. Naruto slowly nodded, the usual light in her eyes dimming under the seriousness of the mission. Got it. Tsunade's gaze shifted between Neji and Naruto, her expression hardening. Remember, not a word of this mission leaves this room. Not to your friends, not to your team, not even in passing. Neji responded with a curt nod, already treating the matter with the gravity it deserved. Naruto, on the other hand, gave a sheepish smile, rubbing the back of her neck. As much as she wanted to complain, about acting like some stuck-up noblewoman, about not being able to fight the way she usually does, one glance at Tsunade's dangerously twitching eyebrow shut her up instantly. Don't worry, Bachan, Naruto said quickly, forcing a cheerful tone. I won't say a word. Tsunade narrowed her eyes. Naruto. I mean it, she added, holding up both hands in surrender. Lips sealed. Totally sealed. Good, Tsunade muttered, still eyeing her with suspicion. Because if anything gets out, if this mission is compromised, it won't just be your head on the line. Naruto straightened again, a more serious look settling on her face. I understand. I won't let you down. Tsunade gave a final nod before dismissing them. You both have 3 days. Use them wisely. As Neji and Naruto turned to leave, she glanced back over her shoulder, one last playful spark in her voice. But you owe me for this, Bachan. Big time. Tsunade sighed. Get out before I change my mind and assign you to latrine duty instead. Naruto giggled and bolted. Neji following silently behind, his eyes flicking toward her with a trace of curiosity. Something told him this mission wasn't just going to test their skills, but their patience, too. Neji gave a silent nod of acknowledgement, still studying the photo in his hands. For a moment, he wondered, not for the first time, what fate had in store for him on this mission. With their roles now clear, the two shinobi left the Hokage's office, each heading off to prepare for the mission that was set to begin in 3 days. Day 1, the etiquette nightmare. Naruto's first day of training in basic etiquette was nothing short of disastrous. By noon, she was practically in tears, slumped over a desk in the small room Shizune had arranged for their practice sessions. Her posture was terrible, her manners non-existent, and the sight of a dozen different spoons laid out for one meal had her head spinning. No slouching. Back straight. Don't grab the cup, lift it gently. No. That's the dessert fork, not the salad one. Why does this woman even need 10 spoons? Who eats like this? Naruto wailed, her voice echoing through the room. She pouted, shooting a desperate look at Shizune, who crossed her arms and gave her a disapproving shake of the head. Naruto, you need to learn this. If you can't convince others you're her, the mission will fail. Naruto groaned dramatically and flopped forward onto the table, cheek pressed to a silk napkin. This is worse than Kakashi-sensei's survival training. Privately, Shizune sympathized. Naruto had grown up without parents, without anyone to teach her the formalities of upper-class life. And the closest thing she had to a mentor, Jiraiya, had taught her plenty about jutsu and peeking, but absolutely nothing about how to hold a teacup without looking like she was about to punch someone. Day 2, ramen withdrawal. To her own surprise, Naruto began to improve on the second day. She could now sit through a proper tea ceremony without spilling anything or throwing the cup out of frustration. She even managed to curtsy, though her version looked more like a squat at first. I'm actually getting the hang of this, Naruto said proudly, her hands on her hips as she grinned at her reflection in the ornate mirror. Shizune gave her a tired smile, but it quickly faded when she noticed the empty ramen cup shoved in the corner of the room. Naruto, she said sternly. Have you been eating instant ramen again? The blonde froze. Maybe? That was all it took. The next thing she knew, Shizune was in full nurse mode, confiscating all her hidden cup ramen stashes and banning her from Ichiraku until further notice. Instead, Shizune took it upon herself to cook balanced meals for Naruto 3 times a day. No more salt bombs. You're supposed to be a noble lady, not a noodle gremlin, Shizune scolded as she placed a steaming bowl of miso-glazed salmon and perfectly arranged vegetables in front of her. Naruto stared at it like it had personally betrayed her. It's not ramen, she whispered, heartbroken. Eat, Shizune ordered, hands on her hips. Naruto pouted but obeyed, muttering under her breath about how even missions of life and death didn't prepare her for this kind of suffering. Day 3, the final test. The third and final day of training had arrived, and Shizune couldn't help but smile as she watched Naruto hunched over her writing practice. The girl's progress had been nothing short of impressive. She had thrown herself into the training with surprising dedication, as if she were mastering a new jutsu. Though, if Shizune were being honest, the threat of a lifelong ramen ban from Tsunade had certainly been an effective motivator. She chuckled quietly at the memory, covering her mouth with a hand. Still, Naruto's rapid improvement made her proud. Her posture was better, her etiquette sharp, and even her speech had softened into something far more refined. It wasn't perfect, of course, but it was enough to pass for someone of nobility. Now, there was only one thing left to tackle. Clothing and hair. Shizune glanced down at the bright splash of orange Naruto wore like a second skin and sighed. It wasn't that the clothes were ugly. In fact, Naruto's style suited her energetic personality. But it definitely wouldn't work for the role she was about to play. Shizune cleared her throat gently. Naruto-chan. The blonde looked up from her practice scroll with a smile. Shizune-chan. But her grin faded quickly when she caught the look on Shizune's face. What? What did I do now? She asked, brows drawing together. Shizen walked over and sat beside her, hands folded in her lap. Naruto, do you only wear orange clothes? Naruto blinked, then glanced down at her signature jacket. Well, yeah. I like orange. It's bright and strong. Like me, she said proudly, puffing out her chest. Shizen smiled softly, but her head tilted with just a touch of judgment. It does suit you, she admitted. But nobles from the land of silence aren't known for wearing bright colors. They favor softer, more elegant tones, pastels, silvers, deep blues, and ivory. We need to adjust your wardrobe to match your new identity. Naruto groaned dramatically and flopped back onto the mat. No ramen, no orange, what's next? No smiling. Shizen laughed, placing a gentle hand on Naruto's shoulder. You can still smile. In fact, the woman you'll be impersonating is known for her grace and poise, but she also has a warm presence. That's something you can use. You don't need to change who you are, just how you present it. Naruto sat back up slowly, her face thoughtful. So, I have to be someone else, but still kind of be me? Exactly, Shizen said. You're not pretending to be her, you're becoming her. And we'll start with her style. She stood and gestured toward a rack of carefully selected outfits, elegant garments in muted colors, embroidered with delicate patterns and crafted from fine, high-quality fabrics. Try these on, Shizen instructed gently. And after that, I'll show you how she styles her hair. She has a tendency to do it for her, of course, but you should know how to manage it on your own, just in case. Naruto looked at the clothing rack as if she were being sent to battle a tailed beast. Alright, she grumbled, dragging her feet toward it. But if any of these dresses are tighter than my ninja gear, we're gonna have words. Shizen just smiled, watching the blonde's dramatic reaction with patient amusement. Despite all the complaints, Naruto had been trying, truly trying. It warmed her heart to see that effort, even if the girl covered it up with grumbles and exaggerated sighs. How wrong Naruto was. The clothes weren't tight at all. In fact, they hid her figure completely. Flowing skirts, layered robes, wide sleeves, and cinched waists, everything was designed for elegance, not mobility. Which, to Naruto, was an even greater offense. How am I supposed to fight in this? She cried out, holding her arms stiffly at her sides while Shizen fussed with the waistline. I've got, 4 layers on. 4, Shizen-chan. You're not supposed to fight, Shizen replied calmly, pinning a sash in place. You're supposed to act like a noble heiress. That means moving with grace, not drop-kicking people. Naruto pouted. You're lucky I'm too tired to drop-kick you right now. Shizen chuckled under her breath. Just relax. This is the last stage. After this, you'll be ready. Meanwhile, Neji followed Tsunade down the quiet corridor toward the training room. His expression was unreadable as always, calm and composed, but a faint curiosity lingered in his pale eyes. He and Naruto weren't particularly close. They had fought together, shared missions, even stood as comrades during desperate battles, but they had always remained somewhat distant. She was loud, chaotic, emotional. He was calm, reserved, disciplined. Opposites, in nearly every way. But still, he trusted her. Naruto had earned his respect a long time ago. And he knew better than most that she had a way of exceeding expectations when no one believed she could. Prepare yourself, Tsunade said quietly as they reached the door. She's still adjusting. Neji arched an eyebrow but said nothing as Tsunade slid the door open. Inside, Naruto stood in front of a tall mirror, her back straight, her long blonde hair half-styled and loose. Elegant twists. The ornate gown she wore draped around her like mist, soft hues of ivory and lavender that shimmered faintly in the light. She looked nothing like the Naruto he knew. Naruto caught his reflection in the mirror and turned sharply. Neji? What are you doing here? Don't just sneak up on people like that. Neji blinked. For once, words escaped him. Tsunade smirked faintly behind him. I told you she was adjusting. Naruto crossed her arms beneath the thick sleeves and scowled. I feel like I'm wearing a whole futon. Shizen giggled. You look beautiful. Naruto's scowl deepened, her cheeks flushing. TCH. I look like a doll. Neji finally spoke, his voice quiet. You look convincing. That gave her pause. Naruto glanced back at the mirror and muttered, convincing, huh? She wasn't sure how to take that, but somehow, coming from him, it didn't sound like an insult. Neji's breath was caught in his throat, he couldn't understand this at all. He can't particularly describe the word right now, looking at Naruto wearing something a woman of a very powerful clan would wear. Heck, even Hinata-sama, his cousin, wore something like this once during her coming-of-age ceremony. But to Naruto, words cannot describe how beautiful she looked in that clothes. Cat got your tongue, Neji? Tsunade laughed, while Neji immediately shook his head and coughed. Tomorrow you will leave early in the morning. Make sure she didn't do anything stupid at all. Tsunade continued. Neji's breath caught in his throat. He couldn't understand what was happening, not exactly. There wasn't a single word that could capture the way he felt right now, standing frozen as he watched Naruto step into the room dressed in the formal attire of a noble heir. The layers of delicate fabric flowed around her like water, elegant and refined, a far cry from her usual loud orange jumpsuit. It was a look he'd seen before, on his cousin Hinata during her coming-of-age ceremony, but somehow, it felt completely different on Naruto. No, it was different. She looked radiant. Powerful. Beautiful in a way that stole the words right out of his mouth. Tsunade let out a low chuckle, arms crossed as she observed the interaction. Cat got your tongue, Neji? Neji blinked, flinching slightly as if waking from a daze. He coughed lightly and gave a short, composed shake of his head. Apologies, he said quickly, regaining his usual stoicism, but his eyes still lingered on Naruto for a second too long. Tsunade smirked knowingly before her tone shifted into something more serious. You'll be leaving at dawn tomorrow, she said, directing her gaze to both of them. This mission is high risk. Naruto, stay in character. And Neji, make sure she doesn't do anything reckless that blows her cover. Neji nodded sharply. Understood. Naruto rolled her eyes but grinned anyway. You guys act like I want to mess things up. You don't want to, Tsunade muttered dryly, but you always manage to anyway. Shizen stifled a laugh while Naruto pouted in offense, turning slightly so the layered sleeves of her dress flared dramatically. Neji looked away, because if he looked at her any longer, he wasn't sure what kind of expression would betray him next. You'll be in charge, Neji, Tsunade said firmly, turning away after making sure the blonde girl was cooperating. Neji nodded silently and followed her, leaving Naruto standing there, on the verge of exploding with embarrassment. The next morning, Neji waited at the entrance of the Hidden Leaf Village. His backpack was packed with everything he needed for the mission ahead. The sun was just beginning to rise, casting a soft golden light across the village, but Naruto was nowhere to be seen. Neji groaned softly and pressed his fingertips to his temple, sending a subtle chakra message. Suddenly, the sound of hurried footsteps echoed through the quiet morning air. Neji. Sorry for making you wait, I woke up a little late. Naruto said, skidding to a stop in front of him, chest heaving as she caught her breath. Despite wanting to let her rest, Neji knew they were already pressed for time. Let's go, Neji said curtly, turning to leave. Naruto followed, already chatting away, her boundless energy surprising him this early in the day. The land of silence is far, Neji reminded her, his tone serious. The faster we run, the sooner we get there. Naruto pouted but kept up, matching his pace. Yes, yes, she said, sticking close behind as Neji expertly leapt from tree to tree, moving swiftly through the forest. After running for quite some time, the two finally stopped to take a short break beside a quiet, flowing river. Neji knelt down and carefully inspected the water before filling his bottle. Once satisfied that it was safe, he took a long, much-needed drink, running without breaks had drained their water supply completely. He let out a quiet sigh and glanced to his side, where Naruto knelt beside him, cupping water into her hands and drinking it eagerly. Her twin pigtails bounced slightly with each movement, such a childish style for someone about to impersonate nobility, and also her whiskers. Yet, Neji found the contrast oddly fitting. The memory of seeing her yesterday, dressed in elegant robes, lingered in his mind. She had looked like a different person entirely. Almost regal. Almost unreachable. His gaze shifted and suddenly caught sight of her fingers, wrapped in fresh bandages. "Your hand," Neji said softly, almost more to himself than to her. "Huh? Oh, this?" Naruto held up her hand and grinned without hesitation. "I was practicing a new jutsu last night, and doing some of the training Shizun-chan gave me. Kinda overdid it, I guess." Despite the clear signs of overexertion, there wasn't even a hint of embarrassment in her voice. She was proud of her effort, her growth, and maybe even her bandages. Neji simply nodded, but something in his chest tightened a little. "We should keep moving. We don't have time to waste." "Right." Naruto sprang to her feet and followed him as they took off again through the trees. As with most missions, the journey wasn't without complications. They encountered a few wandering bandits and a couple of rogue ninja trying to make a name for themselves, nothing they couldn't handle. But it served as a reminder, danger was never far behind, and they were still only at the beginning of their mission. Yet even in the face of each skirmish, Naruto's spirit never faltered. And Neji was beginning to realize that watching her fight, watching her grow, was slowly becoming the most distracting part of the mission. Finally, they reached the land of silence. The town was strikingly elegant, lined with grand estates and bustling with nobles from various villages who had either chosen this place for vacation or moved here permanently. Known for its rich mineral resources, the land of silence exuded wealth and sophistication. However, despite its affluence, the town lacked a formal shinobi infrastructure. Their natural chakra levels were too low, making it nearly impossible to train ninja the way other villages could. Every passerby carried themselves with practiced grace, shoulders back, chins raised, every movement deliberate and refined. Naruto, normally so energetic and casual, felt unusually quiet. She glanced around with wide eyes, clearly aware of how out of place she would have seemed if not for the etiquette training she had endured under Shizun. "Thank Kami I went through that training," she thought, resisting the urge to scratch her head or slouch. They finally arrived at their destination, an expansive estate nestled behind high stone walls and guarded gates. This was the home of the person they had been assigned to protect, the daughter of the regional leader. No wonder Tsunade had stressed the importance of this mission. A pair of servants bowed politely and led them through the elegant hallways of the estate, their footsteps echoing softly against the polished floors. The decor was ornate, fine tapestries, hand-carved woodwork, and soft golden light filtering through paper-paneled windows. Eventually, they were brought to a sitting room where the head of the household awaited them. "He will see you now," one of the servants said softly, sliding open the door. Naruto straightened her back and adjusted her posture, suddenly hyper-aware of every movement. Neji, ever composed, walked beside her with quiet grace, his expression unreadable as always. As the sliding doors opened, they were met with the calm but commanding gaze of the town leader, a stern-looking man dressed in layered formal robes, his aura exuding power and weariness. Beside him sat his daughter, the very woman Naruto was meant to impersonate. Naruto caught herself mid-stare. So this is the girl I'm supposed to become. And in that moment, the mission became painfully real. "My lord," the servant said with a bow, "these are the shinobi from the Hidden Leaf village you requested." The man nodded solemnly. Neji's sharp eyes immediately caught the unusual detail, bandages, or perhaps a fine cloth, wrapped around the noblewoman's eyes. In the photo they had been given, her vision had appeared normal. Why now was she blind? But Neji said nothing. He simply lowered himself onto the cushion provided, composed but observant. Naruto followed suit, careful to mirror the proper etiquette Shizun had drilled into her. "I can hardly believe it," the town leader spoke, his voice thick with emotion as he studied Naruto. "You truly do resemble my daughter, it's remarkable." Naruto remained silent under the weight of his gaze, but glanced once more at the girl beside him. Same light blonde hair, same delicate facial features, yet she was so still, so fragile in comparison. Naruto couldn't hold her question any longer. "If I may ask, my lord," she began, her voice soft but steady, "what happened to her eyes?" The room fell silent for a moment, the weight of the question pressing down like a stone. The man's gaze shifted, first to Naruto, then to his daughter. "My lovely girl," he said at last, his voice strained with restrained grief, "was blinded by an assassination attempt. Poison, laced into her tea by those who seek to destabilize our rule. She survived, but her sight was taken from her." Naruto's breath hitched, her curiosity giving way to a wave of sympathy. She had known this mission was dangerous, but now it felt personal. "I'm sorry," she said quietly, bowing her head. The town leader nodded. "She cannot be seen in public like this. Word of her condition would spread, and we would become a target too vulnerable to defend. That is why we need you, to become her. Until the threat is eliminated." Neji's jaw tensed. The mission was already complex. Now, it was tangled with grief, vengeance, and delicate politics, an invisible weight that threatened to tip the balance with every wrong move. The girl beside the town leader remained silent, hands folded neatly in her lap, the fabric covering her eyes still and pristine. She hadn't said a word, yet Naruto couldn't shake the feeling that the girl had turned her head ever so slightly toward her, as if acknowledging, in silence, the strange and heavy burden they now shared. Neji broke the silence with his steady, formal voice. "My name is Neji Hyuga, of the Hyuga clan," he said, bowing respectfully. "And this is my comrade, Naruto Uzumaki." Naruto mirrored the bow, her expression polite, concealing the mix of nervousness and determination brewing inside her. The town leader nodded in approval, his gaze briefly lingering on Neji's pale eyes, as though silently confirming what he had already assumed. "A Hyuga," he murmured. "Then my daughter is in good hands." He gestured to the quiet girl beside him. "This is my daughter, Yuki. She is the same age as Naruto, and was once just as lively, before everything." His smile faltered, then returned, thinner than before. "You both will be provided with a private room each, and access to our full resources. Consider yourselves part of the household from this moment forward. Rest today, the charade begins tomorrow." At his signal, two servants stepped into the room from the sliding doors behind them and bowed deeply. "Please, follow us," one of them said gently. Naruto and Neji stood and bowed again before quietly following them out. To Naruto's immense relief, their rooms were located side by side within a quieter wing of the estate. The halls were pristine, the air filled with faint floral scents. And guards moved silently in the background, always watching, always alert. Naruto stepped inside her assigned room and glanced around. It was elegant, but not overly lavish, everything neatly arranged, down to the folded silk robes on the bed and the ornate hairpins resting beside them. A mirror stood in one corner, beside a low table with cushions and tea already prepared. She exhaled slowly. The mission had officially begun. The next day began far too early for Naruto's liking. She was jolted awake by a flurry of soft footsteps and gentle voices. A small army of attendants entered her room with purpose, some carrying garments, others setting brushes and cosmetics on a nearby table. Naruto blinked sleepily, only to find herself being ushered onto a cushion as skilled hands immediately went to work. Layers of elegant clothing were draped around her, and someone gently pressed makeup onto her face, carefully concealing the faint whisker-like marks on her cheeks. As much as Naruto wanted to protest, wanted to squirm away or ask if she could just wear her ninja gear instead, she didn't. This was the mission. For today, and however long it took, she had to be Yuki. "The first event you must attend is a formal social gathering," an elderly servant explained, adjusting the pins in Naruto's styled hair with surprising delicacy. Yuki-sama never missed such occasions, not until the tragedy robbed her of her sight. Naruto sat still, her expression calm, though her stomach churned with nerves. Another servant stepped forward with a small silver tray, offering Naruto a light herbal drink to calm her nerves. Her voice, too, was flat and restrained. There are troubling rumors spreading about Yuki-sama. Some say she's gone mad. Others believe she's been hidden away in shame. These lies hurt us deeply. Naruto glanced at the servant in the mirror, noting how everyone in the room spoke the same way, carefully, evenly, and without emotion. There was a strange stillness in them, like they were all trained to be invisible. It unsettled her. "Why do you all talk like that?" Naruto asked, frowning slightly. The elderly woman met her eyes in the reflection, pausing for just a beat. "Because in this household, emotion is weakness. We serve in silence and protect what remains of Our Lady's dignity." Naruto swallowed hard. It wasn't the answer she expected. But in that moment, she understood, this wasn't just a mission of protection or deception. It was a house built on pride, tragedy, and deep-rooted sorrow. And now she was walking straight into it. Naruto sighed as she was led by the elderly servant toward the entrance of the estate. Waiting there, as always composed, stood Neji, arms crossed, posture rigid. And yet, the moment his eyes landed on her, something in his expression faltered. Just for a second. He wouldn't admit it, not even to himself, but seeing her like this, dressed in refined silks and moving with grace she didn't even know she had, took his breath away. "I will be accompanying the two of you by order of my lord," the elderly servant said in her usual monotone, bowing slightly with a hand pressed to her chest. She held out a folded higasa, a traditional sun umbrella. "Here you go." Naruto took it, hesitating as she tried to open it. The moment she did, the servant immediately reached over to correct her grip with a faint shake of her head. "You must hold it with your wrist straight, and slightly tilted to the left. Not like you're preparing to swing a kunai," she murmured with the faintest edge of disapproval. Naruto shot a desperate look at Neji for help, but he simply raised an eyebrow and shook his head ever so slightly. "You're on your own," that gesture said. Suppressing a groan, Naruto adjusted her hold and began walking, her steps slow and deliberate. The moment they passed the estate gates and entered the main path to town, the crowd parted before them like a ripple through still water. Heads bowed. Voices hushed. Naruto's eyes widened. The reaction was instant and overwhelming. She had no idea how much power Yuki-sama truly commanded until now. As they moved toward the grand hall where the gathering was to be held, Neji followed close behind, every sense sharp and alert for danger. His eyes scanned the crowd, watching for signs of aggression, shadowed weapons, or suspicious movements. But his gaze occasionally flicked to Naruto, just to make sure she was okay. Sensing her confusion and silent awe, the elderly woman leaned in slightly and whispered, "Yuki-sama is regarded as the most respectable and elegant woman in this town. Her presence alone demands reverence." Naruto nodded slowly, still overwhelmed by the crowd's reaction to her borrowed identity. She straightened her back, lifted her chin, and took a calming breath. If she was going to pull this off, she had to become Yuki in every step, every gesture, every breath. And for once in her life, Naruto Uzumaki walked in silence. Hushed whispers rippled through the air the moment they stepped into the gathering. The once lively room gradually fell into silence as eyes turned toward Naruto, no, Yuki, gracefully entering beneath the soft shade of her higasa. Confused murmurs spread like wildfire. "Isn't she supposed to be blind? I thought she was injured. Could the rumors have been false?" Naruto stiffened slightly under the weight of their stares. Her grip tightened around the handle of the higasa, her mind racing. She wasn't used to this kind of attention, especially not in a silk dress and playing pretend. "Yuki-sama," the elderly servant called out more clearly this time, her voice cutting through the tension like a blade. The deliberate use of the name confirmed it to everyone, the town leader's daughter was alive, present, and well. Naruto gave a small, respectful nod, still not entirely used to being called Yuki. Her heart pounded beneath the layers of fabric. So many eyes. So much silence. But she kept her posture steady. Allow me to guide you to your seat, the elderly woman said, already walking ahead with practiced grace. Naruto followed carefully, mimicking the poised steps she had been taught. Just behind her, Neji entered, silent, tall, and composed. The effect was immediate. This time, the whispers were of a different kind. Who is that? He's definitely new. Yuki-sama's bodyguard? He looks so serious, but so handsome. Naruto heard the comments and rolled her eyes internally. Of course they'd notice Neji. His calm presence, those pale, unreadable eyes, and that cool, stoic aura practically drew attention without effort. Neji, meanwhile, was unfazed. His focus remained solely on the crowd, evaluating exits, reading lips, noting tension. He didn't seem to register the way the young women in the room all leaned just a little closer as he passed. Naruto exhaled quietly as she reached her seat, mentally preparing herself for whatever came next. The real Yuki had mastered this world of careful glances and subtle cues. Now it was her turn to survive it. And judging by the way everyone was watching her, the performance had only just begun. To ease your tension, Naru-chan, the elderly servant whispered softly so only Naruto could hear, her voice calm and composed, you may call me Hana. That's what Yuki-sama always called me. Naruto smiled, grateful for the small kindness. Alright, Hana, she said with practiced ease. Smiling had become second nature at this point, almost like wearing a mask. One she was starting to wear well. Soon, food began to arrive, dish by elegant dish. Hana, watching from the side, had braced herself for awkward table manners or slip-ups, but Naruto handled herself surprisingly well. Her movements were practiced, imperfect, yes, but graceful enough to pass. It wasn't Yuki's flawless elegance, but it was enough to keep up the illusion. So this is a social gathering, huh? Quiet, stiff, and everyone just flexing their jewelry, Naruto thought as she raised the porcelain cup of tea to her lips. Neji stood silently behind her, his eyes scanning the crowd. The food was fine, but the tension in the air lingered like smoke. There was still potential danger in every corner. Neji's gaze briefly flicked to Naruto. Sitting poised and composed, she held herself with such grace and dignity that it startled him. She looked like she belonged among these nobles. That was the thing about Naruto, give her a challenge, and somehow, she'd rise to meet it in the most unexpected way. A faint smile tugged at the corner of his lips before his expression hardened again, returning to the mission. Time passed without incident, and Neji was just beginning to lower his guard, until a new server approached. A man. Neji's eyes narrowed, studying him as he poured tea for Naruto. Something was wrong. The man's hands were trembling too much for someone trained in service. His posture was too stiff, and his eyes, darting nervously, never quite met anyone's gaze. The second he stepped away, Neji leaned down ever so slightly toward Naruto's ear, speaking in a barely audible whisper. Naruto. That was all he said. But it was enough. Naruto's hand froze just before the tea touched her lips. Without breaking character, she slowly lowered the cup and set it aside. Hana, catching the hesitation and Neji's subtle movement, frowned. She picked up the teacup and brought it close to her face. One sniff, and her expression turned dark. This is, she murmured. Her voice then rose, sharp and commanding. Who served this tea? The room fell silent in an instant. Conversations halted. All eyes turned toward their table. Neji stepped forward. Search the serving staff. Now. Panic flickered in the corners of the hall as guards and servants began to move. Hana's expression was unreadable as she held the tainted cup in her trembling fingers. Naruto remained silent, eyes calm but alert. The performance was over, for now. The real mission had just begun. Someone foolish enough had dared to attempt an assassination on Yuki, Naruto in this case, during the very gathering meant to showcase her presence and strength. Experts quickly identified the substance in the tea, a deadly poisonous herb, carefully slipped in to ensure no one would suspect until it was too late. Fortunately, no one else had drunk from the same cup, and the crisis was averted, this time. The leader stormed into the room, his face twisted in fury. His voice rang out like thunder, commanding the entire hall. "Everyone, leave immediately. This gathering is over." The crowd scrambled, whispers turning into hurried footsteps as the nobles and guests filed out, leaving only a select few behind. Naruto, Neji, Hana, the leader, and a handful of trusted guards remained. The leader's glare bore into the assembled group. "This is an act of war against my family and my people. We will find whoever is responsible, and make them pay." Naruto's heart raced beneath her composed exterior. The mission had just turned far more dangerous. And now, more than ever, she and Neji needed to be vigilant. Neji stepped forward, voice calm but resolute. "We will do everything in our power to protect Yuki-sama. No harm will come to her while we are here." Hana nodded silently, her usual monotone replaced with quiet determination. The room's heavy tension was broken only by the distant sound of footsteps and the heavy breathing of those left to guard and protect. This was no longer just a mission to protect a noble heir, it was a fight for survival. The day finally drew to a close, and Naruto was at last able to rest. She collapsed onto her futon, exhaustion weighing heavily on her limbs and mind. It had been a long day. Neji spent hours deep in investigation, while she herself had to maintain the delicate facade of Yuki. Greeting townsfolk, exchanging polite words, and entertaining every visitor who came her way had drained her more than any battle ever had. With a heavy sigh, she pushed herself up into a seated position. Naruto knew this was only the beginning, the act had to continue long after the mission's conclusion. When exactly it would end, she had no idea. Out of all the missions she'd faced, this one was by far the most exhausting. Who would have thought that socializing and pretending to be someone else could be so utterly draining? Resting a hand on her forehead, Naruto glanced toward the door where two guards stood vigilantly, stationed there to uphold the illusion that she, Yuki, was safely behind it. The real Yuki, hidden away somewhere, remained out of sight. A mystery even to Naruto. She wondered, not for the first time, what it would be like to meet the real Yuki, to see the girl whose life she was now living. Despite the leader's assurances of trust, there was a clear line she and Neji were not permitted to cross. A wistful sigh escaped her lips as her thoughts drifted to Kakashi and the rest of Team 7. Were they safe? Did they worry about her absence? Was she truly doing the right thing by being here, in this strange place, wearing a mask? For now, those questions would have to wait. The next day, Naruto continued to keep up the act, reassuring the townsfolk that Yuki was safe and well. Neji was nowhere to be seen by her side, he was still deep in investigation alongside the leader, questioning the man who had served the poison tea. For now, the only company Naruto had was Hana and two young servants. Their synchronized movements and quiet efficiency gave her chills, almost reminding her of the strict discipline Captain Yamato had imposed during training, intimidating and unyielding. Naruto sat quietly in a chair by the flowing river, watching the water ripple gently. One of the servants carefully adjusted her hair into Yuki's customary style. This was part of Yuki's daily routine, and Naruto found the calmness of it a welcome break from the exhausting social interactions she'd endured. She thought to herself that it was far better to spend the day like this, quiet, serene, and somewhat natural, than to endure endless smiling faces, forced compliments, and the endless display of flashy jewelry worn like armor. Here, pride was worn like a crown, heads held high to remind everyone of their noble birth and destined fate. But even to someone like Naruto, who was known for her genuine, wide smiles, the smiles she saw around her felt hollow, masks worn to hide insecurities, fear, and maybe even darker secrets beneath the surface. Ever since that fateful day at the formal gathering, marriage proposals for dear Yuki, or rather, Naruto, had begun to pour in like a relentless tide. The old rumors about Yuki being blind had made many potential suitors hesitant, but after witnessing her walking confidently through town and the attention she commanded during that recent occasion, the interest had rekindled, stronger than ever. With a soft grunt, Hana set down a decorative wooden box brimming with letters, each carefully tied with silken ribbon or sealed with wax. Her expression was amused, her eyes glinting with a mix of nostalgia and curiosity. Naruto stood nearby, visibly flustered. She had never received this kind of attention before, certainly not romantic attention. Even if the townsfolk still mistook her for Yuki, the respected daughter of the regional leader, being on the receiving end of such devotion felt surreal. Marrying Yuki, after all, was a dream for many young men in the town, a shortcut to power, prestige, and a comfortable future. Despite looking like our Yuki-sama, Hana began with a gentle smile. I can't deny you have your own charm, Naru-chan. A different kind of light that draws people in. Naruto awkwardly scratched her cheek as she opened the box. Her bright blue eyes scanned the sea of letters, hesitation written all over her face. With trembling fingers, she picked one at random and unfolded it. The scent of fresh ink and pressed flowers wafted up. The words inside were long and poetic, an impassioned confession of love. Whether the writer admired her, or Yuki, wasn't immediately clear. Either way, it made her cheeks flush a deep red. Hana chuckled softly, watching her reaction. We've already examined every letter, she said, as if sensing Naruto's nerves. No threats, no hidden messages. Just pure, unfiltered admiration. The trusted attendants had done their due diligence and now, perhaps out of amusement or affection, they had decided to let Naruto read them herself, to see how the fiery, golden-haired girl would react. Naruto folded the letter again with exaggerated care, trying to hide her embarrassment. They're really intense, she muttered, blinking rapidly. Hana, ever the guiding hand, leaned closer. But I must advise, no matter how flattering the words may be, her tone turned soft. Yet firm. Please don't get too attached. Not yet. Naruto looked up, smile returning, bright and unwavering. Heh. Of course I won't, she said, puffing her chest with mock confidence. And just like that, the room warmed with her presence, her infectious energy banishing the awkwardness in the air. Even in this borrowed identity, Naruto remained undeniably herself, unpredictable, kind, and brilliantly alive. Today is Yuki-sama's rest day. So, the rest of us servants assigned to look after you will be leaving you alone, Hana announced gently as she stood up. She gave a small bow before gesturing to the two other trusted servants in the room. Quietly, they followed her out, leaving the blonde girl alone in the large, quiet space. Finally, Naruto had some alone time. The days she had spent here had been exhausting. Her mind had been occupied, focused on getting Sasuke back, on earning the acknowledgement of the people of the Hidden Leaf Village, and training herself to the point of collapse. She had been pushing herself so hard, she had forgotten what it felt like to just be a child again. Her only company now was a small wooden box filled with love letters, tokens she had barely glanced at until now. With a sigh, she pulled it closer, lifting the lid. She began reading through the letters one by one. Some were filled with kind words and admiration for her strength and grace, while others, well, some were unsettling in their obsession. Time slipped by without her realizing. A sudden knock at the door snapped her back to reality. Naruto blinked, startled. She rose from her futon and padded toward the sliding door. As it opened, her eyes widened in surprise. Neji, she said, staring at the Hyuga standing there, a tray of food in his hands. The servants mentioned you hadn't eaten lunch, Neji said simply, his tone calm but sincere. So I brought you something. Naruto blinked, momentarily stunned. Neji, who was always so distant and composed, had brought her food. A small, playful smile formed on her lips. Well, aren't you thoughtful? Didn't think you had that side to you, she teased, tilting her head. Wanna come inside? Neji hesitated for a moment, then stepped forward, the tray steady in his hands. Maybe today wouldn't be so lonely after all. Neji made himself at home, his pale eyes calmly scanning the room. It was simple, but with subtle traces of Naruto's presence, her scrolls, her jacket tossed over a chair, the small wooden box of letters still open. His gaze shifted toward her. Naruto was at the mirror, fixing her hair into pigtails. It was the first time Neji had ever seen her with her hair fully down. long, straight strands of golden blonde shimmered in the soft afternoon light. He found himself staring longer than he meant to, noting how her features had softened. Feminine, yet strong. As much as Neji secretly preferred her hair like this, loose, untamed, free, he couldn't bring himself to say it aloud. He wasn't even sure where the thought had come from. His emotions were confusing. This wasn't how he used to see her. Back then, Naruto had been the loud, rowdy tomboy with a fondness for pranks, an odd obsession with catching bugs, and an unwavering loyalty to Orange, bright, loud, and completely impractical for a shinobi. She had been chaotic, brash, reckless. An easy target. But that Naruto had left for 2.5 years, and the one who returned, was different. She still wore orange, yes, but now with black. Her edges had matured, her presence steadier. She was still Naruto, but not the same girl from before. Neji. Naruto's voice snapped him out of his daze. She waved her hand in front of his face, eyebrows furrowed. He blinked, slightly embarrassed. I've been trying to get your attention for minutes. I even finished my food, she huffed, arms crossed. Her cheeks were puffed up in mock annoyance, but her newly done pigtails somehow made the expression adorably childish. Neji's lips tugged into a rare smile, until he realized what he was doing. Did I just think she was cute? He froze, mentally shaking the thought from his head. Naruto raised a brow at his odd behavior. You okay? You looked like your brain just short-circuited. Neji cleared his throat, straightening his posture. I was thinking about the assassination attempt on Yuki-sama. That quickly sobered the mood. It was reckless, he continued. Too public. Sloppy. Any trained shinobi could have spotted the signs. But the moment they saw me next to you, they decided to stay low for a while. Which means they're not done. They're waiting for another chance. Naruto's smile faded. She sat up straighter, eyes sharp now. How could they try something like that in front of a crowd? Neji's eyes darkened. People are. Enough. She fell silent, eyes narrowing as she looked directly at him. The weight of his words settled between them. You're not talking about me, right? She asked quietly, almost accusingly. He didn't answer right away, instead holding her gaze. But his silence wasn't one of judgment, it was restraint. Neji had seen the old Naruto jump into battle without thinking. But the girl in front of him now. She was smarter. Still impulsive, but thoughtful. She had grown. No, he finally said, voice low. Not you. Not anymore. Naruto blinked, stunned by his sincerity. The room fell into a comfortable stillness. The air between them had shifted, subtle, but undeniable. Something unspoken lingered there, fragile and new, as if the next word might tip it into something neither of them was quite ready for. Has your hair always been that long? Neji asked suddenly, the words slipping out before he could stop them. He blinked, mentally kicking himself. Why did I say that? Naruto looked surprised, her hand instinctively going to her pigtails. Yeah. I let it grow while I was away training. I guess I just didn't think to cut it. There was a brief pause before Neji spoke again, unable to stop himself now that he'd started. Isn't it hard to fight with it that long? Naruto glanced at him, amused. You're one to talk. Your hair's just as long as mine. But not as long, Neji countered, tilting his head slightly, his tone calm but teasing. Mine doesn't whip around as much. Naruto chuckled softly, the sound light and genuine. I got used to it. It's easy to manage when it's in pigtails. And besides, she smiled, brushing a loose strand from her face. I kind of like it this way. Makes me feel like me. Neji stared at her, the corners of his mouth twitching. She looked so different, yet she hadn't changed at all. The same spark, the same strength, but tempered now with a grace he hadn't noticed before. I like it more when it's down, he thought, eyes still on her. What? Naruto blinked, eyes wide. Neji's breath caught. Did I just say that out loud? Huh? Neji replied quickly, feigning confusion. But his ears, betrayal in the form of a soft pink flush, gave him away. His expression, usually so composed and unreadable, cracked just enough for Naruto to notice. Her eyes narrowed with a teasing glint. Neji, did you just say you like my hair down? No, I meant, he faltered, then sighed in quiet defeat. You must have misheard me. Naruto's grin widened with mock innocence. So you do like it down? I said it looks different, Neji muttered, purposefully avoiding her gaze. That's all. Sure. Naruto crossed her arms, leaning back slightly as she studied him with amusement. You know, for someone so stoic, you're surprisingly easy to fluster. Neji didn't respond, instead directing a sudden interest toward a spot on the wall. But his silence only made her laugh, a soft, airy sound that filled the room like sunlight. For once, he didn't mind being the target of teasing. Not when it came from her. The atmosphere shifted again, the playful spark settling into something quieter. The silence between them grew tender, no longer awkward. Just, natural. The space they shared felt smaller somehow, as if something invisible had drawn them closer. Thanks, Naruto said suddenly, her voice softer than before, earnest, even. Neji was quiet for a moment, his gaze steady on her. There was a weight to her words, loneliness, maybe. And strength, the kind that came from pretending it didn't bother you. Naruto's eyes met his. Her expression wavered, just for a second, caught between surprise and something warmer. You really have changed, she whispered. So have you, he replied. The words lingered in the air, hanging there like a question neither of them was ready to ask. Naruto was rather uncomfortable at the silence, she wasn't the type of person to stay quiet. In fact, she has been eager to speak, but ever since this mission started, needing to disguise someone, act like them, and speak like them made her tired. So, how is Hinata-chan doing? Naruto asked suddenly, her voice light with curiosity but laced with genuine care. She had been friends with the Hyuga heiress since they were kids, ever since Hinata found the courage to stand beside her. Neji's expression darkened just slightly. Of all the people she could have asked about, why her? What about him? She's doing fine, Neji replied, his voice quieter than before. Something in his chest twisted. A strange, unfamiliar tightness. Hinata had admired Naruto for years, since the Chunin exams, maybe even before that. And it had never been a normal admiration. Neji knew. He had seen it. Still, why did it bother him so much? Before the feeling could settle, he countered with his own question. What about Sasuke? Any updates on him? Naruto's expression fell instantly. The cheerful spark in her eyes dimmed, like a candle snuffed out. Neji noticed it right away, and instantly regretted bringing him up. Did I say something wrong? He asked, his tone more cautious now. Naruto shook her head slowly, forcing a small smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. No, it's okay. She paused, then took a breath. It's a lot harder to bring him back now. It's like, we keep chasing shadows. No matter how close we think we are, he always slips away. She looked down, fidgeting with the hem of her sleeve. But I already promised myself, I will bring him back to the village. She clenched her fist with firm resolve. Her voice grew stronger. No matter what. I owe it to him. I owe it to everyone. Neji watched her with a strange mixture of admiration and discomfort. Her determination, so fierce and unwavering, made something twist in his gut. That emotion again. He'd buried it long ago, back when he and Hinata were still on uneven terms. He recognized it now, envy and jealousy. But who was he jealous of? Was it Sasuke? The one Naruto still chased through the shadows? Or was it Hinata, the one Naruto smiled at so easily, who had earned a place in her heart years before? Neji's jaw tightened. He hated how it made him feel uncertain, exposed, vulnerable in a way no battle had ever made him feel. His thoughts were interrupted by Naruto turning back to him with a grin, eyes gleaming with that familiar spark. But I'll get stronger. Strong enough to make him see reason. I know I can do it. Neji nodded slowly. I don't doubt that. But inside, Neji couldn't help but wonder, just how special was Sasuke to Naruto? As far as he remembered, they were merely teammates. Childhood comrades, yes, but nothing more, or so it should have been. Why go so far, risk so much, and bear such pain just to bring him back? Sasuke had betrayed the hidden leaf. He had chosen to walk away. So why did Naruto keep chasing him? Neji sighed, burying the emotion that threatened to rise again. He shoved it down like it was something shameful, something that would eventually disappear if ignored long enough. Overthinking. It was a side of himself he wasn't used to. Or willing to accept. Suddenly, a servant knelt in the doorway, head lowered respectfully until it touched the floor. The Lord has requested your presence tonight, the servant announced. He would be honored to have both of you join him for dinner. He also mentioned he wishes to discuss something of importance with you. The servant lifted their head, then quietly stood and exited the room without another word. Neji rose from his seat, brushing invisible dust from his robes. I'll take my leave as well, he said, his voice formal again. Controlled. The moment they shared earlier now tucked away like a fragile memory. He wanted to get these thoughts out of his mind. Without another glance, he walked out, leaving Naruto alone in her room. The sun slowly began to set, casting long shadows across the paper doors and bathing the walls in a soft, amber glow. Naruto sat in silence for a moment longer before standing and walking to the window. From where she stood, she could still hear the sounds of the town, laughter, footsteps, merchants closing their shops, children chasing each other down the paths. Life moved on, despite everything. She smiled softly. It was comforting, in its own way. Not long after, a different servant arrived to escort her to dinner. With her long robe trailing behind her, Naruto followed quietly through the dim halls lit by flickering lanterns. Halfway there, she turned a corner and nearly collided with someone. Oh, she started, before realizing who it was. Neji stood there, already dressed in formal attire, his posture as impeccable as always. Their eyes met. For a brief moment, everything paused again. The awkwardness of earlier lingered, unspoken but present. You look, he began, then caught himself. Prepared. Naruto blinked before laughing softly. You too. I didn't expect you'd be so punctual. I don't like keeping nobles waiting, Neji replied, then added after a beat, or you. Naruto glanced at him, surprised, but before she could say anything, the servant leading them cleared their throat. This way, please. Side by side, they continued down the corridor, the space between them small, but filled with tension neither of them fully understood yet. Tonight, they were guests of the Lord. But something told Naruto this wasn't going to be just an ordinary dinner. The dinner was uncomfortable, to say the least. Naruto sat stiffly, barely touching the food in front of her. The tension in the room was so thick it felt like every bite would lodge in her throat. Thankfully, she wasn't required to play the role of the leader's daughter, Yuki-sama, tonight. The real Yuki sat quietly beside the Lord, wearing the ceremonial cloth that still veiled her eyes. Even so, the sight unsettled Naruto. What if someone connected the dots? What if word leaked that she had impersonated the village heir, even temporarily? She hadn't stopped thinking about it. But the calm and loyal Hana had reassured her before the dinner began. Everyone present tonight is trusted, she'd said. None would dare speak of what should remain buried. Still, Naruto couldn't shake the unease. Around her, the nobles discussed matters of politics, trade, and security, topics that made her head spin. Only she and Neji remained quiet, sitting beside each other, lost in their own thoughts. Occasionally, their shoulders brushed when they shifted. She didn't mind it. Her gaze drifted toward Yuki, who sat perfectly still, silently eating, the cloth still shielding her expression. Guess it's not just the two of us being quiet. Naruto mused. It's the three of us. Suddenly, a loud voice cut through the low hum of conversation. My lord. How do we know these shinobi can be trusted? A man snapped, rising halfway from his seat. The table fell into a heavy silence. Naruto blinked, confused. The discussion had shifted, and she'd completely missed it. What's he suddenly blabbering about? She muttered under her breath, annoyed. Neji tilted his head toward her. You weren't listening to the conversation, were you? Naruto glanced away guiltily. How was I supposed to know it was important? She thought. I personally hired these shinobi, the Lord replied calmly, dabbing his lips with a napkin. In the time they'd been here, they'd performed their duties exceptionally well. But allowing them to dine with us? The man argued, his voice tinged with outrage. This is more than hospitality. This is trust. What if one of them is a spy? A traitor? What if they leak everything discussed here tonight? Naruto's jaw tightened. She could feel the weight of the room's stares shifting toward her and Neji. The clatter of a cup meeting the table silenced the room. The Lord had set his drink down, calmly, but with unmistakable finality. I do not invite traitors to my table, he said, his voice cold and sharp. If I believed for even a moment that either of them posed a threat to this domain, they would not be seated here, they would be in chains. The accuser stiffened, realizing he had overstepped. And let me remind you, the Lord continued, trust is earned through actions, not bloodlines. These two have risked their lives for this village already. I trust them. A heavy silence followed. Naruto let out a slow breath, feeling the tightness in her chest ease just a little. She glanced at Neji, who remained calm, unshaken as ever, but his hand, resting lightly on the table, had curled slightly into a fist. Before anyone could speak again, the Lord added, besides, they may prove essential for what comes next. That single sentence sent another wave of tension through the room. Even the nobles seemed unsure how to respond. Naruto straightened in her seat. So this dinner isn't just about pleasantries, she thought. There's something bigger coming. And it had only just begun. Neji. Naruto. The leader's deep voice cut through the silence like a blade. All eyes turned to the two shinobi. Once he had their attention, he continued, his tone grave. On the night of April 3rd, a festival will be held to celebrate the founding of this village, he said. But that is also the night the next attack is likely to occur. Naruto sat up straighter, her eyes narrowing. Neji didn't react immediately, but inside, he was already calculating. A large festival, the perfect distraction, crowds of people and divided security. Of course it made sense. Still, something about the leader's certainty unsettled him. With all due respect, my lord, Neji said, his voice calm and measured, how can you be so sure? The leader didn't hesitate. I learned it from my daughter herself. A gasp rippled through the room. Whispers rose like a sudden breeze, only to be silenced by a single sharp glance from the leader. Naruto's brow furrowed. From Yuki? She turned toward the quiet girl beside the Lord. Her face remained neutral, expression unreadable beneath the cloth covering her eyes. But Naruto sensed something hidden, something that hadn't been said until now. The day my daughter was robbed of her sight, the leader said, his voice hardening, the attacker left a message, spoken not to me, but to her. He stood slowly, the air in the room growing heavier with each word. He said he would return for her, on the night of April 3rd. Naruto's hands curled into fists beneath the table. The mention of Yuki's first assassination attempt made Naruto's blood boil. How could they do such a thing to a girl who have no business with them in the first place? I have made many enemies, the leader continued, and I've faced them without fear. But to drag my only daughter into their war, to blind her, to mark her, that is beyond forgiveness. The moment they found out about her existence, they knew she was my weakness. A flicker of raw emotion broke through his composed facade. Since that day, I've trusted every word she's spoken. Her senses may be impaired, but her mind is sharp. And her warnings have not failed me yet. A hush fell over the room. Naruto glanced at Yuki, who remained silent, hands folded in her lap, as if this wasn't even about her. But Naruto could see the tension in her jaw. She knows more than she lets on, Naruto thought. The leader sat back down slowly. On that night, security will be at its tightest. But I want you two to operate beyond the usual perimeters, move with the crowd, blend in. If this enemy comes for my daughter again, we will be ready. Naruto nodded. Understood. Neji gave a silent bow of acknowledgement. His thoughts were racing, but his face gave nothing away. The festival, something meant to celebrate peace, was now a battlefield waiting to happen. And they had just been given their roles. I want the two of you to continue the act, the leader said, his voice steady but laced with urgency. His gaze landed firmly on Naruto, his expression softening just slightly. Your resemblance to my daughter has been an incredible advantage. Naruto blinked, a little taken aback. It's confused the enemy these past few days. Enough for us to buy time, fortify defenses, and throw them off their rhythm. For that, I'm grateful. Naruto's hands curled in her lap. She hadn't realized how crucial her role had been beyond just being bait. This wasn't just a disguise anymore, it was part of something bigger. Someone's life depended on it. The leader continued, now turning to address them both, his tone grave. On the night of April 3rd, while the festival draws every eye in the village, I want you, Naruto, to be out there, posing as Yuki. He paused, letting the weight of those words settle before adding, the enemy will come. And when they do, they'll come for you. Neji's brows furrowed subtly, but his lips remained pressed in a firm line. He didn't like the idea of Naruto as the direct target, but he also understood the necessity. As for my daughter, the leader continued, she will remain hidden, under heavy protection. The real Yuki must be kept safe at all costs. If they realize the truth too early, they'll retreat and vanish again, and we may not get another chance. Naruto nodded slowly, her usual playfulness gone. So I'm the decoy, she said, more to herself than anyone. You're more than that, the leader replied. You're the reason we have this opening. But I won't pretend the risk isn't high. It won't take long for your cover to break, once they sense something's off, they'll come hard and fast. His gaze sharpened. That's why Neji will be by your side. You'll blend into the crowd. Dance, laugh, act the part, but never drop your guard. Naruto exchanged a glance with Neji, who gave the slightest nod of reassurance. Whatever happened that night, they would face it together. The leader exhaled deeply. We've been walking on a knife's edge for too long. This time, we end it. The dinner ended without any further tension or disruption. As the guests dispersed, Naruto quietly made her way back to her quarters, only to nearly bump into Neji again in the hallway. She blinked up at him in surprise, then chuckled softly. Of course. Their rooms were right next to each other. They walked side by side down the corridor. It was quiet, but not awkward, just a shared stillness, one that felt almost calming. Then, without looking at her, Neji broke the silence. Don't worry, Naruto. When the time comes, I'll be by your side. His voice was low but steady. I already know you'll be complaining about all the layers you have to wear. Naruto huffed, pouting. I can protect myself, you know. I never said you couldn't, Neji replied, still not meeting her gaze. But before you get the chance, those ceremonial clothes will be dragging you down. I'll buy you time to change into your shinobi gear when the attack begins. Naruto blinked, a little stunned by how seriously he was taking this, how carefully he had thought it through. Their steps slowed as they reached their rooms. Naruto opened her mouth to respond, but the words caught in her throat. She didn't quite know what to say. She was turning toward her door when Neji spoke again, this time softer, almost rushed. And one last thing, he paused for the briefest moment. You look beautiful tonight. Before she could even react, he turned and disappeared into his room, sliding the door shut with a quiet thud, cutting off any possible reply. Naruto stood frozen in place, her hand still hovering near her door. Her heart skipped a beat, her face flushing a shade of pink she couldn't control. "Idiot," she whispered under her breath, smiling to herself as she finally stepped into her room. For once, the weight of what was coming didn't feel so heavy. Naruto stood just inside her room, the door quietly clicking shut behind her. She stared at the floor for a second, her heartbeat louder than it should have been. Then, slowly, she raised a hand to her face, her cheeks were warm, burning even. "What was that?" she mumbled, burying her face in her palms. "Why did he say that? And why am I, ugh?" She collapsed face first onto her futon, groaning into the blanket, kicking her legs once in frustration. Her brain tried to spin it as a joke, a fluke, but her chest told her otherwise. That fluttering, it wasn't nothing. She knew that much. Meanwhile, just on the other side of the wall, Neji leaned back against his own door, arms crossed, head tilted slightly up as if searching for answers on the ceiling. His usually calm demeanor was cracking, betrayed by the faint pink at the tips of his ears. "Why the... Did I say that?" he muttered under his breath, shutting his eyes tightly. "Beautiful? Beautiful? What's gotten into me?" His hand subconsciously moved to his chest, fingers grazing over his heart, now beating a bit faster than normal. He exhaled through his nose and sank down to sit against the door, resting his elbows on his knees. This wasn't like him. He didn't make careless remarks. He didn't speak without thinking. But with Naruto, lately, everything felt unpredictable. On the other side, Naruto lay still, staring up at the ceiling. "Idiot," she whispered again, this time not just at him, but at herself too. And yet, for reasons neither of them could explain, both fell asleep that night with the faintest of smiles. The festival was only a week away, and yet the entire village was already bursting with life. Streets were being adorned with colorful lanterns and woven banners, laughter echoed through the air, and vendors had begun setting up stalls selling treats and trinkets that only appeared during this special time of year. From the estate's window, Naruto watched in quiet reflection. The town looked so full of joy, it didn't feel staged or forced. The smiles on the people's faces were genuine, and their excitement painted the air with warmth. It reminded her of the village festivals back in Konoha, where even the loneliest days felt a little brighter with music and light. But her thoughts drifted elsewhere. Yuki. The true daughter of the village leader. Naruto had never spoken to her directly, but the servants often talked. They said Yuki had once been the heart of the estate, gentle, kind, always thoughtful. A girl with a smile so radiant it could light up even the dullest room. She dreamed of seeing the world, of exploring places far beyond these village walls. Her mother used to tell her stories, vivid and full of color, painting images in her imagination that felt more real than anything she could touch. But that was before her mother passed away. Naruto's fingers curled slightly against the window frame. The servants had told her how everything changed after that. Yuki began to smile less and less. Her laughter faded, and the spark in her eyes dimmed until it was gone entirely. Her world, once full of wonder, collapsed into darkness. Naruto frowned. She learned that Yuki's father, the village leader, had buried himself in politics. He grew distant, consumed by responsibility. Yuki was left alone, surrounded by servants who cared but could never replace what she lost. Her only solace had been her mother's stories, and with her gone, the world became something to escape, not explore. One night, driven by desperation, Yuki had fled the estate. She wanted to see the world with her own eyes, just once, something real to remember. But instead of a dream fulfilled, she returned with a nightmare, an ambush, a cruel attack that left her blinded and broken. Since then, she shut herself off completely, lashing out, refusing meals, throwing trays to the floor in anger and despair. Naruto swallowed hard, her chest tightening. She suddenly felt the weight of what she was doing, not just pretending to be Yuki, but living out her unfulfilled dream, walking in her place under the sun. She was the light that the villagers believed still existed, while the real Yuki remained trapped in shadows behind closed doors. It didn't feel fair. I want to meet her, Naruto whispered to herself, pulling away from the window. No matter how much Naruto wanted to meet the girl, the security ordered by the leader was unyielding. She could never get past the guards, not even for a moment. With a frustrated pout, she turned back to the window. 1 week. 1 week before the festival. 1 week before the assassination attempt might happen. Naruto-chan. Startled, Naruto turned around. Standing by the doorway was the leader himself, his presence calm but heavy. My lord," she stammered, bowing quickly, caught off guard. The leader let out a quiet chuckle. "No need to bow," he said gently, stepping into the room. He motioned to the servant behind him, who bowed and moved to prepare tea. "You seem curious about the village festival," he added, taking a seat across from her. "I am," Naruto said, relaxing slightly as she accepted a cup of tea from the returning servant. "It actually made me happy." Seeing their smiles, they weren't forced. They looked real. The leader gave a small nod, taking a sip from his own cup. "The people here are deeply passionate about this celebration. It marks the week we founded this land and named it the Land of Silence. It's become a tradition of pride and hope." His voice faltered slightly, his eyes darkening. "But," he continued, setting his cup down gently, "I can't bring myself to enjoy it, not when someone is out there, seeking revenge, and targeting my daughter." The mood in the room shifted, the warmth from the tea and sunlight now laced with a chill. Naruto sat quietly, letting him speak, sensing the weight he carried. "In the past, my wife, Yuki, and I would walk down together during this time," the leader said. "We would watch the lanterns, the dances. It was her favorite season. And our daughter, she adored those moments. But when my wife passed, everything changed." Yuki smiled less, spoke less. "And I became consumed by duty and grief. A part of me died with her." Naruto stared at the man. She could hear the regret in his voice, but it wasn't enough to quiet the frustration bubbling in her chest. How could he talk about loss while ignoring the suffering of the daughter who's still alive? "Forgive me for interrupting," she said with forced calm, her smile polite but her eyes distant, "but, was there something you needed from me, my lord?" The leader met her gaze for a moment. He seemed to catch the edge in her tone, but he didn't scold it. Instead, he gave a tired smile. "Nothing urgent," he replied. "I only came because I heard from the servants that you'd been asking about Yuki, trying to meet her. I thought it was time I addressed you myself." He paused, his smile softening into something a little more real. "I know you're no threat to us, Naruto. You wouldn't be here if I thought otherwise." Naruto's expression didn't change, but the tension in her shoulders eased just a little. "I trust both you and Neji to continue doing what needs to be done," the leader continued, voice lower now. "But more than anything, I hope that when all of this is over, when the danger has passed and this act is no longer necessary, I can finally spend time with my daughter again. Not just as a leader, but as her father." That last sentence lingered. For a long moment, neither of them said anything. Then Naruto looked down into her tea, her reflection rippling in the surface. "I hope so too," she whispered. The sun had begun to set, painting the skies of the Land of Silence in soft hues of gold and crimson. Naruto stood by the window, watching as the village below buzzed with excitement. Lanterns were being lit, stalls were opening, and laughter echoed through the streets. "I want to explore," she said eagerly. In response, the servants moved quickly, already prepared for this moment. They began dressing her in garments that matched Yuki's style, a soft, flowing kimono with intricate patterns and subtle embroidery. A delicate sash was wrapped around her waist, and a silk cloth once again covered her eyes, completing the illusion. Hana, the elderly servant who had taken a special liking to Naruto, arrived shortly after to accompany her. Neji, already waiting in the courtyard, joined the pair in silence. "Rough day?" Naruto asked, glancing at him. His clothes were slightly damp, and his hair was tied back loosely, he had clearly been training. "Not really," Neji replied curtly, keeping a respectable distance from her as they walked. Truthfully, he had been using training as a distraction. His thoughts had been too crowded lately, especially with Naruto in them. Hana, walking slightly behind them, observed the two with a knowing smile. The way Naruto glanced at Neji, the way Neji tried not to look at her, it was more obvious than they realized. As they entered the bustling festival street, Naruto's face immediately lit up in awe. Lanterns swayed in the evening breeze, laughter and music filled the air, and the aroma of festival food wafted all around them. "This is amazing," she gasped, spinning slightly to take it all in. "Careful," Hana warned gently, reaching out to steady her. "Don't forget, you're still Yuki tonight." "Right," Naruto muttered sheepishly. But the glimmer of childlike excitement in her eyes couldn't be hidden. She was still Naruto, no matter how much she acted. When a vendor offered her a sample of dango, she turned to Hana with pleading eyes. Hana gave a reluctant nod, amused. "Only what Yuki would eat, and just a little." Naruto grinned and took the treat with both hands, humming in satisfaction as she bit into it. "Yuki has good taste," she mumbled through the bite. Neji, meanwhile, remained in the shadows, his Byakugan activated. He scanned the area constantly, looking for anything unusual. When he found nothing threatening, he slowly stepped out from behind a vendor stall, keeping a discreet but close distance from Naruto and Hana. To anyone watching, he looked like another young man enjoying the festival, blending in with the crowd. But inwardly, he remained alert. Then, "Looking for something, young man?" Neji blinked. A soft voice had spoken beside him. He turned slightly and found himself standing next to a small stall, its owner an elderly woman with kind eyes and a warm smile. "You've been eyeing my display for quite some time," she said, folding her hands. "Is there something that caught your attention? Perhaps a gift for a girlfriend? Fiancé? Or maybe, someone you have your eye on?" Neji froze, his gaze slowly dropping to the table. Only now did he realize how long he'd been standing there. On the display were delicate hair accessories, combs, pins, and clips with intricate designs. One in particular caught his eye. It was a comb clip, shaped like delicate petals with small gemstones nestled at the center. Its color shimmered between soft orange and pink, depending on how the light touched it. "Ah," the old lady smiled wider. "This one, isn't it? It's beautiful, subtle but vibrant. I'd say it suits a spirited girl, someone who shines even when she tries to hide." Neji hesitated. He wasn't here to buy anything. He hadn't even meant to stop, but something about the comb had reminded him of Naruto. The colors, the energy, the warmth. I was just looking," Neji mumbled, suddenly feeling out of place. The vendor chuckled softly. "It's always the quiet ones who think the most. If you change your mind, I'll keep it aside for you, young man." Neji gave a polite nod and turned away, but not without a final glance at the comb. He shook his head, trying to focus again, but part of him couldn't help but wonder. Would she even wear something like that? And if she did, would it be because of him? Suddenly, Neji's gaze drifted to Naruto, laughing softly beside Hana, her smile radiant under the soft glow of the lanterns. His heart began to pound uncontrollably. He clenched his jaw, struggling to understand the chaos stirring inside his chest. He sighed and quietly fell back into step, trailing behind them as the crowd thickened. Unbeknownst to him, the vendor he'd just left watched him go with a smirk and gently set the hair comb aside. "He'll be back," the old woman muttered knowingly, returning to her knitting. After exploring the festival for a while, the trio found a quiet bench near the center of the square. The music was lively, drums echoing against the night sky as people clapped and twirled in sync with the dancers. Paper lanterns floated overhead, glowing like stars. Naruto leaned forward on the bench, her eyes sparkling with wonder as she watched. "They look like they're having so much fun. I want to stay a little longer." Neji groaned, crossing his arms and leaning back against the bench. "It's too loud," he muttered, closing his eyes. The noise, the lights, the movement, it was all overwhelming after a long day of patrol and training. Hana chuckled softly beside Naruto, but Neji didn't hear. He wasn't paying attention to their conversation. He just needed a moment of peace. Until. Yuki-sama? A male voice broke through the music. Neji opened his eyes slowly, instinctively alert. A young man, probably around their age, stood awkwardly before Naruto, hands slightly trembling, a hopeful but shy smile on his face. His attire was elegant, likely from a wealthy family. Not a single trace of dirt on his robe. Not a trace of concern in his eyes. Neji's eyes narrowed immediately. His hand subtly tensed at his side, ready to strike if necessary. "Me?" Naruto blinked, pointing to herself. Her voice cracked in surprise. The young man nodded nervously, rubbing the back of his neck. "Yes, would you care to dance with me, Yuki-sama?" Before Naruto could respond, Hana leaned close and whispered, "It's better to accept. Declining might ruin Yuki-sama's image. This boy's family is known around the village." Naruto gave a nervous glance to Neji, who didn't move. His face was unreadable, but his jaw had tightened. She swallowed hard and slowly rose to her feet, placing her hand gently into the young man's. The boy beamed, gently leading her toward the center of the plaza. Neji's fists clenched. "It's just a mission," he reminded himself. "She's acting. It's all for the role." But his thoughts betrayed him the longer he watched. The young man's hand slid to Naruto's waist. She stiffened slightly, and though her expression remained polite, Neji saw the subtle discomfort in her posture. A muscle twitched in his cheek. His eyes didn't leave them. "I could kill him," he muttered under his breath, barely audible. Hana, sitting beside him, chuckled softly, her gaze fixed on the dancing pair. "You could set the poor boy on fire if you keep glaring like that, Neji-san." "I'm not glaring," Neji snapped, jaw tight, though his eyes had never once left the man's hand resting too low on Naruto's waist. "I suppose you'll keep telling yourself that," Hana said with a knowing smile, her eyes twinkling with mischief. "For someone so stoic, your jealousy is quite loud." "Me? Jealous?" Neji turned to her, genuinely confused. The word felt absurd. Childish. Below him. Yet as soon as he said it, the bitter taste of denial clung to the back of his throat. His brows furrowed slightly. Why did it feel like she had touched a nerve? And then the boy laughed, softly, too softly, his hand slipping just a little closer to Naruto's lower back. That was it. Something inside him snapped. Neji stood in one smooth motion. His expression remained calm, but the storm swirling in his eyes was anything but. His strides toward the dance square were slow, deliberate, calculated. The music had shifted now, its rhythm more intimate, the crowd drawing in tighter. Naruto looked increasingly out of place, her smile twitching, her shoulders stiff beneath the stranger's touch. Neji's voice cut through the soft music like a blade. "Excuse me," he said, his tone low and controlled. The boy blinked, startled by the sudden appearance. "Yuki-sama," Neji continued, extending his hand to Naruto with an elegant bow, "allow me." Naruto's eyes widened slightly, her lips parting in surprise. She hesitated only a moment before slipping her hand into his. It was instinctive, natural. The stranger beside her opened his mouth to protest, but Neji was faster. "Your father already called for you," Neji said with a polite smile that didn't reach his eyes. "You wouldn't want to keep him waiting, would you?" There was no room for argument. The boy backed off, mumbled something under his breath, and vanished into the crowd. Neji led Naruto away from the dancers, one hand still lightly clasping hers. His expression was unreadable, but as they passed the edge of the square, he cast a glance over his shoulder. And smirked. It wasn't smug, it was dangerous. Was that really necessary? Naruto asked, breathless from the sudden shift, still slightly stunned by his unexpected intervention. "You looked uncomfortable," Neji said simply, releasing Naruto's hand once they were out of sight from the village square. His tone was calm. But there was a flicker of something else in his eyes, something protective. Maybe something more. Naruto stayed quiet, cheeks warm. She hadn't expected him to step in like that, and especially not during a mission. It wasn't like him to act impulsively. And yet, he had. For her. She glanced at him, her lips parting to say something, but he suddenly mumbled under his breath. I didn't like the way he touched you like that. Her head tilted in surprise. What was that? Nothing, he said quickly, looking away. His jaw was tight, and his gaze fixed somewhere far ahead, but his heartbeat was betraying him, thundering in his chest. This feeling again. From behind them, Hana's voice rang out gently, with a teasing lilt. Be careful, Neji-san. You might just fall harder than you expect. Neji didn't turn back. But for the first time that night, he smiled, genuinely, quietly. The walk back to the estate was peaceful, lit by lanterns that lined the path like glowing fireflies. The village still buzzed with laughter in the distance, but here it felt calm. Intimate. Naruto kicked a stray pebble as they approached the gates. Thanks, for earlier, she said at last, not looking at him. You didn't have to do that. I know, Neji replied. But I wanted to. That silenced her. She didn't know what to say to that, not really. When they finally arrived back at the estate, the guards opened the gates, bowing as they passed. The estate grounds were quiet, moonlight casting a silver glow across the stone walkways. Naruto lingered at the steps leading to her room, turning to him with a small smile. Good night, Neji. He looked at her for a moment longer than necessary. Good night, Naruto. And as they parted ways, each stepping into their respective rooms, the tension of the mission momentarily melted away. For a second, they weren't shinobi playing roles in a dangerous game. Just two people, feeling things they weren't ready to admit. Not yet. But soon. Neji didn't know when it started, when Naruto began to occupy his thoughts this way. He lay on his futon, eyes locked on the ceiling, as if it held the answers he was too afraid to ask. His mind drifted to the boy from earlier, the one who had the nerve to place his hands on Naruto. The one who smiled like he'd won something. TCH. Neji's jaw tightened, and his fists curled into the sheets beneath him. Smug little. The memory of Naruto's uneasy expression haunted him more than it should have. And then, like a whisper from his subconscious, the image of that cone flashed in his mind, the delicate accessory, orange and pink with jeweled petals. Just like her. Bright and loud, but strangely beautiful. He sighed, frustrated. Not at her. At himself. He hadn't been able to stop thinking about her. The way she laughed, so easily. The way her eyes lit up at something as simple as food. The way she looked tonight, illuminated under festival lights like something out of a dream. Was it because she returned from the leaf looking different, taller, more graceful, her features sharper and more mature, womanly even? Or had it started long ago, back at the Chunin exams? When she stood before him, fierce and unrelenting, ready to fight a Hyuga without flinching? Maybe it was both. Naruto had always been different. She defied odds with a smile, challenged fate with her fists, and looked at people like they were worth saving, even someone like him. The prodigy of a cursed clan. Maybe that's why she carved a space into his heart without even trying. She doesn't even know, he thought bitterly. She's too oblivious. Too focused on others. Too focused on him. His thoughts turned sour as he imagined Gaara, yes, that red-haired Kazekage. The way he sometimes looked at Naruto during diplomatic meetings, eyes a little softer, words a little warmer. Neji clenched his jaw. Of course a man like that would admire her. Who wouldn't? But the question that haunted him the most surfaced like a ghost in the quiet. Would she ever chase after me, the way she chased Sasuke? The thought was like poison. It burned. He wasn't Sasuke. He wasn't a mystery to unravel or a tragic hero to save. He was just Neji. Stern, disciplined, cold on the surface, and far too broken underneath. He scoffed at himself. Love? That was a luxury. Something fleeting. Dangerous, even. And yet, every time she smiled at him, every time she leaned too close, or looked at him a second longer than necessary, he felt his walls crack just a little more. And the worst part? He didn't hate it. Still, he knew better than to hope. Naruto was unpredictable. She could be kind one day, distant the next. She gave herself so fully to everyone, it would be foolish to think he was special. She wouldn't fall for someone like me, would she? He turned to his side, draping an arm over his eyes in an attempt to shut his thoughts out. But the memory of her smile, the way she had looked at him tonight when he offered his hand. It stayed. And sleep never came. Days passed, and Neji continued accompanying Naruto to the festival, sometimes with Hana at her side, other times just the two of them. Their walks through the glowing streets had become a quiet routine, their conversations sprinkled with laughter and the kind of comfort that didn't need words. Neji had started to memorize the sound of her laughter, the rhythm of her footsteps beside his. He didn't mean to. It just happened. He would never admit it, but it warmed him, how she noticed the small things, like the darkening circles under his eyes. She'd asked him if he was getting enough sleep, genuine concern in her voice. He brushed it off, saying it was nothing. But the truth gnawed at him, sleep hadn't come easy, not with April 3rd looming over his thoughts like a storm cloud. Tomorrow. The final day of the celebration. The day the assassination might happen. They kept up the act, moving through the village as bodyguard and noble daughter. But underneath the festival lights and paper lanterns, something more fragile and unspoken lingered between them. Then came the day before, the 2nd of April. For just one day, Naruto had been granted permission to drop the disguise. No more pretending to be Yuki. Today, she could be herself again. And it showed. She was practically glowing. Naruto practically bounced down the steps of the estate, excitement bubbling inside her like a shaken bottle. She wore her familiar Konoha kunoichi attire, fresh and fitted, her leaf forehead protector proudly displayed. Her blonde hair gleamed in the morning light as she made her way toward the gate, eyes darting with anticipation. She had heard rumors of a local ramen stand tucked deep within the heart of the festival, and today, she was determined to find it. Just as she was about to step through the gates, a voice called out behind her. Naruto? She turned to find Neji standing at the foot of the path, his eyes widening slightly. He wasn't sure what shocked him more, seeing her in her shinobi gear, or seeing her like this, free, unapologetic, radiant. Even dressed in something as simple as her Konoha uniform, she looked stunning. Naruto grinned, a wide, infectious smile spreading across her face, the kind he hadn't seen in days. The kind that wasn't forced. The kind that reminded him why she was so hard to ignore. Neji, she beamed, walking up to him with that familiar, sunbright energy. I'm going to explore the village again, but this time, not as Yuki. Just me. Finally. She spread her arms out like wings, spinning in a little half-circle. No stiff dresses, no careful posture, no fake smiles. Just ramen and whatever trouble I can sniff out. Her joy was contagious. Even Neji felt the corner of his lips twitch in amusement. Would you like to come with me? She asked, tilting her head slightly. I mean, you don't have to. You're probably tired. Or busy. Or. I'll come, Neji cut in, voice steady. It's safer if I'm with you. And I wouldn't mind. Naruto's smile widened even more, if that were possible. She didn't wait, just grabbed his hand and tugged him along. Then let's go, grumpy guard. Neji didn't even protest. He let himself be dragged into the sunlit streets, surrounded by laughter and the buzz of festival life. For a moment, just a small moment, it didn't feel like a mission. It felt like something more. And yet, at the back of his mind, the thought still lingered like a shadow. Tomorrow is the 3rd of April. The calm before the storm had never felt so deceptively warm. Naruto could finally eat the food she wanted, and it felt so good. For days, she had to pretend. smile softly, act with elegance, decline everything Yuki would never eat. But today? Today she could finally be Naruto Uzumaki again. And her appetite returned with a vengeance. She dashed between food stalls, cheeks puffed out with dumplings, her hands juggling skewers like a festival champion. Neji followed behind her, half guard and half captive, watching her with a mix of amazement and silent affection. The vendors, unfamiliar with her real face, treated her as if she were a tourist from another land. "First time at the festival, miss?" one vendor asked, handing her a free sample of grilled corn. "Try this, on the house. You've got such bright energy." Neji smiled faintly from the shadows. If only they knew. Naruto grinned wide, her real grin, not the small controlled one she wore as Yuki, and took the corn with a dramatic bow. "Thanks, old man." She skipped back to Neji, already gnawing at her snack, not noticing the way his eyes softened every time he looked at her. It wasn't just admiration. It was something deeper. Something more dangerous. She was finally back to being herself, and it suited her too well. They wandered deeper into the marketplace, lanterns swinging above them in warm shades of orange and red. Just then, Neji spotted something in the corner of his eye, the hair accessory stall. The same one from days ago. He hesitated, then looked at Naruto. She was busy watching two kids play with paper fans near a candy stall, her laughter ringing out as one tripped and fell dramatically. Now was the time. He slipped away and approached the stall. The old vendor woman looked up and smiled knowingly. "You came back," she said gently, lifting a small box wrapped in cloth. "I saved it. I had a feeling." Neji blinked. "You really did?" "I can read hearts better than palms," she winked. "And yours was loud that night." He flushed slightly, but took the box with care. Inside lay the hair comb, still pristine. The soft orange and pink petals shimmered gently under the lantern light, like it was waiting for this moment. Neji smiled before paying for it. Neji wrapped it carefully in a white handkerchief and tucked it inside his sleeve. He didn't know when he'd give it to her. Tonight? Tomorrow, after the mission? When this was all over? Or never? "Neji." Naruto's voice broke through his thoughts. "Ramen shop's just ahead, move it." He turned to see her waving him down, bouncing in place, pure excitement on her face. Before he could even move, she rushed toward him and grabbed his hand like a child dragging a reluctant friend to a candy store. "Let's go," she beamed. Neji was stunned. Her fingers were small, but her grip was firm and warm. And for a moment, everything else vanished, the mission, the looming threat of assassination, the fact that tomorrow could bring blood. There was only her. And his heart, hammering in his chest like a war drum. She didn't notice. She never did. And maybe that's what made her so dangerous to him. As she dragged him toward the shop, babbling about extra toppings and miso broth, Neji walked beside her in silence, keeping his sleeve tight, protecting the comb as if it were a secret he wasn't ready to share yet. Because deep down, he knew. Tomorrow was April 3rd. And after that, nothing might ever be the same again. They sat side by side at the small ramen stall, the paper lanterns swaying gently above them in the night breeze. Naruto was in her element, slurping down noodles at record speed, her eyes gleaming with delight at each bite. "This is so good," she mumbled between mouthfuls. "But Ichiraku still takes the crown. This broth's great, but Tuchi's just built different." Neji, however, hadn't touched his bowl much. Not because he wasn't hungry, but because he couldn't stop watching her. There was something oddly peaceful about it, watching her eat. Something grounding. The way she leaned in just a little too close to the bowl, the soft way her brows furrowed when a strand of noodle was too hot, the satisfied little sighs that escaped her lips after every bite. She was alive. Real. Unfiltered. She was Naruto. His Naruto? Neji blinked, startled by his own thought. Just then, her side bangs fell forward again, sticking slightly to her cheek from the steam. She kept brushing them away, but they kept slipping back, stubborn like her. Without even realizing it, his hand moved on its own. He reached across, gently tucking her bangs behind her ear with a slow, deliberate motion. She paused mid-bite, chopsticks frozen in the air. And then he noticed it, a tiny splash of broth on her cheek. Before his brain could stop him, his thumb moved forward and wiped it away, tender and instinctive. Only when he pulled back did he realize what he had done. Naruto was staring at him, wide-eyed, her cheeks now flushed more than the soup had made them. Their gazes locked, breath suspended in the small space between them. It felt like something cracked open in the air. The silence stretched. Too long. Too loud. Neji coughed abruptly and looked away, bringing up his bowl like a shield. "You're such a messy eater. Can't you slow down?" "Huh? What did you just say?" Naruto snapped, still flustered, her pout immediate and defensive. "I was savoring it, thank you very much." "You were inhaling it." "At least I eat my food instead of just staring at someone like I'm in a genjutsu." Neji nearly choked on his broth. Before the bickering could continue, the owner of the ramen stall walked over with a wide grin, holding 2 cups of chilled mochi dessert. He set them down on the counter in front of them with a dramatic flourish. "Special dessert, on the house." Naruto blinked. "Eh? But we didn't order this." The old man just chuckled, wiping his hands on his apron. "No, no. I insist. It's rare to see a couple this lively eating at my stall. You two remind me of me and my wife when we were young." Neji froze. Naruto blinked again, then blurted, "Wait, couple?" The owner just waved off her flustered reaction with a laugh and disappeared into the back of the stall, whistling. For a moment, silence hung awkwardly in the air. Naruto slowly turned to Neji, her mouth slightly agape. Did he just say couple?" Neji, still red, cleared his throat and muttered, "Just ignore him. Old people say weird things sometimes." But the corners of Naruto's lips twitched, like she was trying really hard not to smile. She turned back to her dessert. "Well, if the shoe fits," she mumbled playfully, just loud enough for him to hear. Neji looked up sharply, but she was already digging into her mochi, face partially hidden, though he could see the blush on her ears. And as much as he tried to focus on his own dessert, Neji found himself smiling again. Because maybe, just maybe, the old man wasn't wrong after all. They were still laughing when it happened. A man bumped into their table, abruptly and with enough force to rattle their bowls. The last of the broth from Naruto's ramen spilled across the wooden surface and splashed onto her sleeve. "Ah, sorry," the man mumbled, not stopping or looking them in the eye. He kept walking, disappearing into the dense festival crowd without another word. Naruto scowled, clearly annoyed. "Hey! Watch where you're." She stood halfway up, her voice rising, but Neji didn't hear her completely. His eyes were locked on the man's retreating back. Something felt off. It wasn't just the bump. It was the way the man moved, hurried, too casual. There had been no real reaction, no flinch of embarrassment. It was practiced. Mechanical. Like a man going through a checklist. Neji's instincts screamed at him. This wasn't just a careless passerby. "Naruto." His voice was low but firm. He rose abruptly from his seat, his hand already reaching for hers. "We're leaving. Now." Naruto blinked, startled by the sudden shift in his tone. Neji? What's going on?" "We're going back to the estate." His grip tightened, protective and urgent. "Something's wrong." Neji threw a few coins onto the table to cover the food. Ignoring the shopkeeper's confusion as he pulled Naruto along, weaving through the crowd with precision. "Neji, wait. What is going on?" Naruto gasped as they leapt onto the rooftops, her heart racing to match his pace. He didn't answer immediately. His Byakugan activated with a flicker. His gaze swept the festival grounds, and then further, scanning the far-off blocks near the edge of the noble district. Then, screams. Distant, but unmistakable. Children crying. Adults shouting. The faint, echoing clash of steel. Then came the smoke. Thick and black, curling up toward the sky. Fire flickered just beyond the village walls, bright and growing. It didn't take long to realize. It was coming from the direction of the estate. The estate. Naruto shouted, pushing chakra into her legs as she launched forward, racing toward the fire. Neji was already behind her, matching her stride. He muttered under his breath. It had begun. The day they had dreaded, the final day of the festival. It wasn't supposed to happen until tomorrow. Why now? Naruto's heart thundered in her chest as she raced across the rooftops, eyes locked on the burning smoke curling above the estate. Her breath came in sharp bursts, panic battling instinct. Neji was at her side, both of them pushing chakra into their feet to move faster, faster than they ever had. They had to protect them. The leader. His daughter. They were the mission. As they landed at the edge of the estate, chaos greeted them, flames licking at wooden beams, terrified screams from servants echoing in the halls. The scent of smoke and blood tainted the night air. Split up. Neji ordered, Byakugan already active. Find the leader and Yuki. Naruto nodded once before vanishing into the burning corridor. Further inside. My lord. Yuki-sama. Hana's desperate cry rang out, echoing through the chamber. But before she could reach them, she was struck. A masked man emerged from the shadows, his arm lashing out. Hana cried out as she was slammed to the floor, her body sliding across the tile before falling limp, groaning. The intruder tilted his head, eyes locked on the leader. TCH didn't think your boss would hire actual shinobi, the leader spat full of venom, his voice dripping with disdain. Shielding his blind daughter. The masked man looked at them and tilted his head. It's only fair, he replied coldly. Considering you hired someone. The masked man chuckled, drawing a long, curved blade from his back. He continued, an eye for an eye, isn't that what you politicians say? You live by the blade, die by the betrayal. He took a single step forward. But before he could take another. Boom! The doors behind him exploded open as Naruto burst into the room, her signature orange chakra swirling wildly around her. Multiple Kage Bunshin Daven behind her, fanning out across the chamber. You picked the wrong day to mess with my mission, she growled, eyes narrowed, voice low and dangerous. The masked assassin clicked his tongue. The Ninetails brat. I was wondering when you'd show up. I didn't know I was that famous. Naruto smirked, her blue eyes narrowing with heat. But joke's on you, I'm more than just that. In an instant, her clones lunged forward, swarming the enemy like a tidal wave. The air crackled with chakra as blades clashed and jutsu detonated against the walls. The leader instinctively pulled Yuki behind him, shielding her as smoke filled the chamber. One of Naruto's clones caught a slash to the chest, vanishing in a puff of smoke, while another landed a heavy punch across the assassin's jaw, sending him staggering back with a growl. Just then, Neji burst in through the side entrance, his Byakugan already active. His eyes scanned the chaos in seconds before he dropped to one knee beside Hana, shielding her. Are you alright? He asked quickly, concern flickering in his voice. I'll live, Hana managed through gritted teeth, blood staining the edge of her mouth. Forget me, protect the girl. Understood. Neji stood, ready to advance. But a blur of movement caught his eye, too close, too fast. He leapt back just in time as a blade sliced the air where his neck had been. A figure landed gracefully before him with the poise of a predator. You're even better looking up close, the woman purred. She was tall, striking, with a midnight cloak fluttering around her and long, dark hair tied loosely at her back. Her eyes glimmered with mischief, and something far more dangerous. The blade she wielded dripped with a purple liquid, poison. Who? Neji's eyes narrowed, shifting into a defensive stance. Hiranome, she said with a wink. And you, little Hyuga, are going to make this very entertaining for me. She circled him slowly, as if hunting him with her gaze alone. I haven't fought someone like you in years. That pretty face, that calm expression. I wonder what you'll look like when I break it. Neji remained cold, unreadable, but inside, his mind raced. She was fast, dangerously fast. And the chakra around her was erratic, unstable. This wasn't just a random assassin. She was a specialist. A killer. I don't have time for games, Neji said quietly, activating his 8 trigram stance. Hiranome grinned wider, bloodlust flashing in her eyes. Then let's make it quick, and messy. She struck first, her blade flashing toward his side, laced with a feint. Neji deflected it with a precise rotation, his palm striking toward her ribs, only for her to vanish mid-strike. Behind you. He spun, barely catching her second strike. The air between them crackled with tension as the true fight began, Neji with the precision of a surgeon, Hiranome with the chaos of a storm. Meanwhile, across the room, Naruto's real body broke through the smoke and launched herself directly at the masked assassin, kunai clashing with sword. Her fury wasn't just for the mission anymore. It was personal. Outside, the estate burned. Inside, the battle for everything had begun. Naruto could feel it, this man wasn't normal. His movements were precise, unnervingly fast, his attacks calculated with lethal intent. She dodged his slashes narrowly, the blade grazing her sleeves, too close for comfort. Blocking was hard, he was relentless. Then, without warning, he vanished from her line of sight. Her senses sharpened instantly. Where? A sharp groan of pain cut through the room. Naruto whipped around. Her eyes widened as she saw blood pouring from the leader's side. He had taken the blow meant for his daughter. My lord, she shouted, fury rising like a tide. In a flash, she appeared between them, her foot connecting hard with the assassin's side. The masked man flew back, crashing into the far wall with a grunt, but rolled quickly to his feet. TCH, you really don't know when to quit, Naruto muttered, breathing hard. She glanced back, Yuki was frozen in fear, clutching her father's arm as he struggled to stay upright. Blood dripped from his abdomen, pooling at his feet. I can hold him off, the leader rasped, using the wall to brace himself. Just protect my daughter. She's the future. I'm already done for. You're not dying here, Naruto hissed, her heart thudding hard. But she could see it in his eyes, he knew it too. From across the room, the masked man straightened, dusting himself off. Touching, he sneered. But you won't last another minute, old man. That girl is marked for death, and nothing's going to change that. He stepped forward again. But Naruto didn't hesitate. She threw down a smoke bomb, instantly filling the room with thick gray clouds. Kage Bunshin no Jutsu. Dozens of clones burst into existence, surrounding the masked man in a chaotic blur of movement. Coward, he shouted, slashing through the smoke. But Naruto was already at Yuki's side, lifting her up effortlessly in a princess carry. H-huh? Who are you? Let go of me right now. Yuki squirmed in her arms, hands pushing weakly at Naruto's shoulders. Her eyes were wide with panic, but unfocused, she couldn't see. She was blind, but not deaf, and every sound around her painted a brutal picture. She could hear the clash of steel, the thuds of bodies hitting the ground, the sharp crack of bones, and her father's voice, shaking with pain. We can't leave my father. Yuki shouted, her voice cracking with desperation. Please. Put me down. We have to go back. Of course we can't leave him. Naruto snapped, tightening her grip. But we won't save him if we all die here. Without another word, Naruto turned and leapt through the broken window, chakra surging into her feet as she bounded across rooftops. Behind her, one of her shadow clones followed, carrying the unconscious leader over her shoulder like a sack of potatoes. Another pair of clones remained behind, holding off the assassin as long as they could. Yuki clutched at Naruto's vest, trembling. Please, he's going to die. I heard him. I know, Naruto said quietly, pushing herself to move faster. Her eyes burned, heart pounding hard in her chest. But if you die too, then his death means nothing. Smoke and fire curled into the sky behind them. Screams echoed from the village. Time was running out. Naruto glanced back once. Her clones wouldn't hold much longer. Just hang on, she whispered. I'll protect you. I swear it. The sound of fluttering silk warned him just before impact. He barely had time to dodge as a sharp, curved blade sliced through the air where his throat had been a second ago. Focus, pretty boy, came a purring voice. Wouldn't want you dying with your eyes somewhere else. Neji landed lightly on the wooden floor, Byakugan activated, veins bulging at his temples, gaze razor sharp. He finally got a full look at her. The woman called Kurama moved like a snake wrapped in velvet, her twin daggers gleaming with poison tips, her eyes wild with thrill. She wasn't here to kill cleanly. Neji didn't speak. He couldn't afford to. His hands rose into his clan's signature stance. She was fast, faster than she looked, and reckless. He needed to end this quickly. She lunged again. Neji met her head-on, palms flashing in a blur. He managed to graze her arm, just enough to send a burst of chakra into her meridians. She hissed and rolled back, licking the blood from the scratch like a lunatic. Oh, I like you. Neji didn't like her at all. He moved in, spinning midair, Hakusho Kaiten. The rotation knocked her back and bought him a few seconds. He turned quickly, searching the estate with his Byakugan. The halls were littered with unconscious bodies, chakra signatures flickering. Naruto was gone, with Yuki. Good. The leader's chakra was faint, but alive. But the assassins were spreading. He needed to end this now. Hiranome laughed, limping out of the smoke, one eye bruised and lip bloodied. You've got fire, Hyuga. But you're stretched thin. You're worried about the girl, aren't you? She suddenly vanished in a flicker, appearing behind him. Neji turned just in time, slamming his palm into her stomach. Hakurokujuin Sho. Too late, she smirked, even as the air was ripped from her lungs. Strike. 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 His hands blurred, 64 palms. Hiranome's body jerked with each hit, her chakra system collapsing in on itself as he severed it point by point. Her body hit the ground hard, twitching once, then lay still. Neji stood over her, breath ragged. He didn't speak. He didn't need to. He turned away from her and vanished through the shattered doors in a blur of motion, heart pounding. Naruto, please be safe. Naruto gently laid Yuki down on the soft grass, her chest heaving from the sprint and lingering adrenaline. Her shadow clone, still carrying the Lord's unconscious, bloodied body, appeared beside her, glancing around warily. Find Neji, Naruto ordered the clone, her voice sharp. Leave him with the Lord. He'll know what to do. The clone nodded, vanishing into the trees with the body in tow, while Naruto remained behind with the still panicked Yuki. Hey! Are you even listening to me? Where's my father? Yuki shouted again, her voice laced with desperation and fear. Though blind, her senses were heightened enough to know something was deeply wrong. Be quiet, will you? Naruto snapped, irritation flashing in her tone. There was no time to explain, not when danger was still closing in. She stepped closer, her presence causing Yuki to tense instantly, sensing the movement. Don't touch me. Yuki started, but Naruto was already there. I'm sorry, Naruto whispered, raising a hand and striking the back of Yuki's neck with precise chakra control. Yuki slumped forward unconscious, her protests fading into silence. Naruto caught her gently, lowering her back to the ground with a wince. It's safer this way. You'd just get yourself killed if you stayed awake. She summoned 2 shadow clones to stand guard, their expressions mirroring her own, focused, steely-eyed. Watch her. Keep her safe no matter what. The clones gave curt nods, stepping into position just as a dark silhouette emerged from the tree line. The masked assassin. His chakra was sharp, wrong. Tainted with killing intent so potent it practically burned against her skin. Finally, the masked man drawled, cracking his neck, his voice distorted under the mask. Tracking your clones was a pain in the ass. Naruto turned slowly, stepping between him and Yuki like a living wall. Oh really, she said, lips curling into a wicked grin. If you thought they were annoying, wait until you deal with the original. Her voice rang clear with bravado, but inside, she was already adjusting her stance, channeling chakra to her limbs, ready to strike. The man laughed, a deep, humorless sound. Brave. Stupid, but brave. Too bad bravery doesn't save lives. He lunged. But Naruto was faster. She weaved a quick seal, whispering, Tajukage Bunshin no Jutsu. And in an instant, the clearing was filled with a dozen clones, encircling him. You messed with the wrong blonde, she said, her eyes narrowing, battle ready. And you're going to regret it. The clearing trembled with the weight of chakra. The masked assassin, surrounded by dozens of Naruto's clones, crouched in a battle stance that revealed his lethal intent. His eyes glinted behind the mask, cold and calculating. Let's see if the Ninetales brat lives up to the hype, he snarled, moving faster than the eye could follow. Naruto's clones scattered and surged forward, each strike met with deadly precision. The assassin sliced through several clones with ease, but for every clone that fell, two more appeared. Naruto smirked, her eyes sharp with determination. Come on, you'll have to do better than that. The assassin lunged, closing distance with a flash of steel, but Naruto twisted away just in time. She formed a tight spiral of chakra in her palm, the Rasengan. With a fierce cry, Naruto charged, slamming the spinning sphere into the assassin's chest. The impact sent him staggering backward, his breath knocked out. You're strong, he growled, wiping blood from beneath his mask. But this isn't over. Before he could strike again, Neji stepped forward from the shadows, his Byakugan activated, his eyes glowing white. You were never going to win, Neji said coldly. With fluid precision, Neji unleashed a rapid barrage of gentle fist strikes, targeting the assassin's chakra points. The masked man's movements slowed, his energy faltered. Naruto, catching her breath, locked eyes with Neji. Took you long enough. Neji smirked faintly. Thought you could hold your own until I arrived. The battlefield fell silent except for the whisper of the wind. The assassin collapsed, unconscious. Yuki was safe. And in the quiet aftermath, Naruto and Neji stood side by side, warriors united by the trials they had faced, stronger for having fought together. Ah. What about the Lord? Is he okay? Naruto asked, panic tightening her voice. Neji glanced toward the direction where Hana was tending to the leader. Yeah, he's stable. Hana's doing what she can. He then turned back to Naruto, his gaze softening as he took in the few scratches and bruises scattered across her body. Nothing serious, he knew well how fast she healed. You're hurt, he remarked quietly, concern flickering in his eyes. Naruto gave a small, stubborn smile. It's nothing. I've had worse. Neji wasn't convinced but said nothing more. Instead, he reached out and gently brushed a stray lock of hair from her face, the moment lingering between them amidst the aftermath of chaos. For once, the world felt still. Their mission came to a close after a brief but meaningful conversation with the leader, who was fortunate enough to have survived the attack. Yuki, along with her loyal servants, accompanied Naruto and Neji to the village entrance, the weight of recent events still lingering in the air. As they reached the gate, Yuki suddenly spoke, breaking the silence. My father told me everything about you both, your appearances, your personalities. He said the blonde girl smiles so much, while the boy acts serious. Her voice held a mixture of curiosity and warmth. Despite being in hiding and having Naruto act in her place, her father had found the courage to speak to her again, and it touched her deeply. Naruto and Neji exchanged a glance, the quiet acknowledgement of the journey they'd been through together. Yuki's tone grew more sincere. I am truly grateful for everything you've done, and for saving my father's life." Without warning, she knelt, lowering her head respectfully before Naruto and Neji. Her servants hurried to stop her, but she gently brushed their hands away. "Yuki-sama. You mustn't," one servant pleaded, panic in her voice. But Yuki paid no heed. "I wish I weren't blind right now, that I could see your face, Naruto-chan." She turned toward Naruto, as if sensing her presence beyond the disguise. Naruto knelt beside her, a soft smile playing on her lips. "I'm here," she said quietly. "And I'm honored to stand with you." Yuki continued, a faint smile breaking through her seriousness. "Hana talks about you a lot. She says we look alike, but I believe we don't. We each have our own identity." Neji stepped forward, nodding. "That's true. You're both strong in your own ways." The group shared a moment of quiet understanding before turning to leave. The journey back to Konoha was calm, the road stretching out before them under the soft glow of the setting sun. Naruto and Neji rode side by side, the earlier chaos fading into a distant memory. The bond forged in battle had deepened, unspoken but undeniable. They finally arrived at the Hidden Leaf Village just as the sun was beginning to set, painting the sky in warm hues of orange and pink. Both Naruto and Neji were exhausted from the journey, their bodies aching, yet the weight of their responsibility kept them moving forward. They still had to report to the Hokage before they could rest. The rest of Team 7 had returned the day before from their own mission, filling the village with a renewed sense of hope. As they made their way through the village streets toward the Hokage's office, Naruto stole a glance at Neji, noticing the quiet determination etched on his face. She felt a sudden urge to break the tension. "Hey, Neji," she began softly, "thanks for sticking with me out there." He gave a small, almost shy smile in return. "You handled yourself well. I'm impressed." They arrived at the Hokage's office, where Lady Tsunade awaited them. The legendary Sannin looked over both shinobi with a sharp, assessing gaze, then softened into a smile. Well. Look at you two. Back safe and sound," Tsunade said, folding her arms. "I heard about the chaos. Impressive work." Naruto bowed slightly. "Thank you, Lady Tsunade. It was tough, but we managed." After they finished reporting to Lady Tsunade, the Hokage's sharp eyes softened as she regarded both of them. "Well done, both of you. The village owes you a debt of gratitude," Tsunade said with a rare smile. "Get some rest. You've earned it." Naruto nodded, relief washing over her face. Neji was about to follow when he caught Naruto's attention with a subtle gesture. "Wait," he said quietly, pulling something wrapped in a white handkerchief from his pocket. Naruto blinked, curious. "What's that?" Neji hesitated a moment, then carefully unfolded the cloth to reveal the delicate hair clip comb, the one he had bought from the vendor in the village. "I saw this and thought of you," Neji said softly, his usual stoic expression softened. "I thought it might suit you." Naruto's eyes widened as she took the comb in her hands, turning it over and admiring the intricate design. She looked up at Neji, a genuine smile spreading across her face. "It's beautiful." "Thank you, Neji," she said warmly. Neji's cheeks flushed faintly, but he quickly looked away, trying to hide the small smile tugging at his lips. For a moment, the noisy village seemed distant as they stood side by side, the unspoken connection between them growing stronger. Naruto carefully clipped the comb into her hair, the simple act feeling more meaningful than either expected. As they continued walking back through the village toward Naruto's home, the evening air cool around them, Naruto glanced at Neji. "You know, you don't have to be so serious all the time," she teased lightly. Neji smirked, a spark of amusement in his eyes. "Maybe. But only around you." Naruto laughed softly, feeling a warmth she hadn't felt in a long time. The path ahead was uncertain, but with Neji by her side, and that delicate comb in her hair, Naruto felt ready to face whatever came next. Neji couldn't bring himself to confess. The words always caught in his throat, buried beneath layers of pride and fear. Yet, Naruto noticed the small changes, The way she found herself wearing the delicate comb every day, a silent reminder of him that she kept close. Until the day came, amidst the chaos of the war, in the heart of the battlefield where fate demanded more than courage. The fight against Madara and Obito was merciless. The air was thick with despair and the cries of fallen comrades. Naruto and Hinata fought side by side, but the enemy's power was overwhelming. Neji was there too, eyes sharp, Byakugan piercing through the haze of battle. When Madara unleashed a devastating attack aimed straight at Naruto and Hinata, Neji's instincts took over without hesitation. With a fierce shout, he threw himself forward, shielding them both from the deadly blow. Chakra surged from his body as he absorbed the attack, his own form battered and broken by the overwhelming force. Naruto's eyes widened in shock as she rushed to his side, tears blurring her vision. "And Neji?" Naruto's voice trembled, her eyes wide and filled with tears. She cradled his bloodied hand in hers, desperate to hold on to him, but she could feel his life slipping away, right there, in her arms. He managed a faint, fragile smile, breath ragged but voice steady despite the pain. "Protect them. Naruto. Protect our future." Hinata knelt beside them, Byakugan activated. The Hyuga heiress also couldn't stop herself from crying. But Neji shook his head gently, refusing the aid. "This is my fight," he whispered, voice barely audible. "You carry on with your dreams." Naruto's tears fell freely now, tracing lines through the dirt on his cheek as she gripped his hand tighter, refusing to let go. The world around them felt distant, the sounds of war fading beneath the pounding of her heart. As his vision dimmed, Neji's last thoughts were not of regret or fear, but of hope, for Naruto, for Hinata, for a future they all dreamed of but might never see. His sacrifice was more than a final act, it was a silent promise, a spark igniting the fire within those left behind. And in that moment of unbearable loss, Naruto felt the weight of his love and strength settle deep inside her soul. But beneath the grief, an aching question lingered: how could she continue without him? How could she carry the burden of tomorrow when the one she'd hoped to walk it with was already gone? The tears came harder now, as the world mourned the loss of a quiet hero who had given everything so others might live. "You still haven't confessed to me. You idiot." Naruto's voice cracked as tears spilled down her cheeks. The weight of everything, the pain, the loss, the unspoken feelings, crushed her heart. She was on the verge of breaking, barely holding herself together. Obito's voice echoed relentlessly in her mind, whispering lies about betrayal, about turning her back on the people she swore to protect. But none of it mattered now. All she could think of was Neji, his quiet strength, his sacrifice, and the words he never got to say. Her sobs grew louder, raw and desperate. "Why didn't you tell me? Why did you keep it all inside?" From behind her, soft footsteps approached. Hinata appeared quietly, her own eyes shining with tears. She gently placed a hand on Naruto's trembling shoulder. "Naruto," Hinata whispered, her voice steady but gentle. "He loved you. More than words could say. Sometimes, love isn't about confessions or grand gestures. It's about fighting for those you care about, even when you can't say it out loud." Naruto leaned into Hinata's touch, clutching her hand as if it were the only thing keeping her anchored. "We still carry him with us," Hinata continued, "in every breath, every step forward. Neji's sacrifice isn't the end, it's the beginning of a future he believed you could build." A shaky breath escaped Naruto's lips as she wiped her tears away. I wish I could have told him how much he meant to me before it was too late." Hinata squeezed her hand, a quiet promise passing between them. "We'll make sure your feelings live on. Together." For the first time that day, Naruto felt a small flicker of hope through the grief, a fragile flame she vowed to protect. The end to this story.